Welcome to Montreal, and welcome in particular to our loyal viewers in Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland, wondering why there was no decent sport on the box this afternoon. Well, rest assured, you've found it here. A Canadian Grand Prix in glorious sunshine and in front of packed crowds here at the Circuit Gilles Villeneuve. They love their Formula One in this part of the world, Mark Blundell, and they're proving it once again this weekend.
Definitely. I mean, I don't think anyone's watching World Cup soccer over here. They're all in those grandstands, you say, Steve. But they're a great educated crowd over in Canada, and they really look forward to this one event. And, you know, there's a lot of passion here, and there's a big following, obviously, from the days of Gilles Villeneuve a long time ago. Pretty warm day here. Is it warm enough to change the essential character of this race? Well, you know, it's going to be tough on the drivers. It's going to be tough on the cars. But the biggest point with the track temperature climbing up because of this weather is the tyres. And it may fall into the hands of Bridgestone, but I think we're a little bit too far back. Now, we're reaching the halfway point of the season here this afternoon. What hope for Michael Schumacher and his quest to catch the amazing Fernando Alonso? You know, I don't think there's any hope at the moment. I think these guys really have some serious amount of work to still do because they need to catch up with the Renault. It's a smooth operation at the moment. There's no glitches, and Ferrari look a little bit frustrated. Well, in qualifying yesterday, Fernando Alonso proved his amazing current form by taking pole position for the 5th consecutive race. James Allen and Martin Brundle now look back on that qualifying session in detail.
Well, this Montreal circuit is one which ramps up. The more rubber goes down, it gets faster and faster. It's absolutely vital, isn't it, Martin, to time your qualifying runs properly, to go out at the right moment. Mark Webber got it all wrong in the first knockout session, held up by his own teammate. What did you make of that?
Well, everybody's out there trying to do their job, but you do have to keep your eye on your mirrors. It's just an unwritten rule. And obviously, little Nico Rosberg taking quite a slapping from his teammate and Rubens Barrichello, actually, in the Honda. But hey, who does he care? He's in the top 10.
Yeah, he made it through to P6 in the end in qualifying. Into the second knockout session, it was a case of the disappearing BMWs, really. They were 3rd and 4th in free practice, Villeneuve and Heidfeld, 11th and 13th at the end. What was that all about?
Well, a lot of talk that they had some flexi rear wings that they've got to do something about, but I think they just generally underperformed. I think they were as disappointed as we were.
Into the final part of qualifying then, Ferrari on the harder Bridgestone tyres, struggling to make them work. Michael Schumacher's 5th on the grid and Felipe Massa 10th, and they've got Jarno Trulli in 4th place in the Toyota to deal with.
Nightmare for them. I'm sure they're trying to out-strategy the Renault team. They're certainly not going to outpace them at Ferrari. And the last thing they need is Trulli, who tends to struggle a bit with race pace. He's outperformed his car, I think, with his qualifying grid slot. So it's going to be a major challenge for Ferrari today.
Alonso was fastest in all 3 qualifying sessions, and it looks very much like an in-house battle between him and Fisichella here. So let's take a look at the grid. It's an all-Renault lockout. Alonso has his 5th pole position in a row, only the 2nd time this season Fisichella started alongside him. Raikkonen top 3 again, and Trulli outperforming the car in 4th. Michael Schumacher struggling a bit with the tyres in 5th, Rosberg's 2nd best performance of the year. Montoya and Button back in the top 10 for Honda, ahead of teammate Rubens Barrichello in an all-Brazilian row 5. Villeneuve disappointing in qualifying alongside Christian Klien in the Red Bull. Heidfeld and Ralf Schumacher, the 2 Germans, on row 7. Then it's Liuzzi and Coulthard on row 8. Through to row 9, Webber angry to have been held up by his teammate in qualifying, and Scott Speed. Just 2 seconds separate the Midlands from the Renaults, but 16 cars are between them. And at the back, the 2 Super Aguris, 4 seconds off Alonso's pace.
The car has been perfect all weekend, so why not tomorrow in the race? We start in a perfect position with Giancarlo in 2nd place, so great opportunity.
I think we got a good strategy, so we can win again. We got a possibility to do 1 and 2.
I was not 100% happy with the car. The car felt it better in the morning, but it was sliding a bit too much, so a bit surprised that it was still quite quick, even the handling was not good.
It's a bit disappointing, especially, you know, I made a mistake in the last chicane. I hit the curve too hard and threw me off, so I lost a couple of tenths there. And those couple of tenths would have been good enough to P4.
I had a lot of oversteer. You know, we basically had that all weekend, and I just can't carry the speed into the corners. And that's where you lose your time here. So it doesn't surprise me. I'm at the back end of that group.
On my fastest lap, I was even in the wall. But my father said use every millimeter there is to use, so that's what I did.
The key is probably to open a gap in the first part of the race and then control it a little bit, but it will be difficult to open a gap because I think everybody will be very quick.
Well, Nico's father may have told him to use every millimetre of the track, but Sam, what did you say to your boy after qualifying about making some space for his teammate?
I think the first thing about making room for his teammate is down to the driver. Obviously they have to sort it out between themselves once they're out there. We did have a change of plan in the first qualifying, and we released the cars too close together. Normally we try and keep a 30-second separation between our two cars, and it was only 10 seconds, so we were partly to blame in the pits as well. But it's always recoverable. But Nico and Mark have had a word about it, and it's yesterday's news now.
Well, it's kind of compromised Mark, but Nico in pretty good shape for this race. It's very hot here today. What kind of effect is that going to have?
It's very warm. That'll help the tyres. It's always the hotter the better for us. I think they're both in. Obviously, Mark's starting down in 16th place because he's moved up a place because of an engine change on another car. So he'll have good strategy. He's got the freedom to choose whatever strategy he wants, and I'm quite sure he can come through and hopefully score some points at the bottom there. Nico, meanwhile, he needs to have a good start off the line, because if he can get around truly into the first corner, then that's going to make a big difference to his race this afternoon, I think.
Thanks, Sam.
Okay, thanks, Louise.
And we're also hearing that David Coulthard will start this race now from the back of the grid after opting for an engine change in his Red Bull. Problems also for Michael Schumacher and Ferrari. Qualifying on the third row, which was a disappointment, behind Jarno Trulli. How much of a problem that?
Well, it could be a big problem, actually. I think Jarno Trulli has really put the area of concern with Ferrari, because it just hasn't quite gone to plan with their strategy. They're obviously running a bit of fuel on there, because you could see that with their outright pace, and if they can't get by Trulli early enough, they're going to lose a massive amount of time.
And at the front of the grid, an all-Renault front row, what will be Giancarlo Fisichella's attitude alongside Alonso? Is he going to race him?
Oh, definitely he has to, Steve, because he's just got signed up for next year, so he's settled there, but he needs to get back to being a dominant factor within that team and winning more Grand Prix. We've seen him do it before. Great opportunity today to see that again.
Well, a reminder of the position in the Drivers' Championship with the 23-point lead of Fernando Alonso, the gap that Michael Schumacher has got to try to make up. You do get the feeling that if he can't make at least a dent in it here and at Indianapolis next week, it'll all be a little bit too late. Well, it's too late already in terms of any World Championships for Jenson Button and Honda, who after a disappointing start to the season are set to part company with their technical director Jeff Willis, but at least here at Montreal their qualifying performance was slightly more respectable. Jenson Button in 8th. I talked to him yesterday evening, but first of all, here's Ted Kravitz on all the problems and changes behind the scenes.
Thank you, Steve. Yes, and when you ask people in Formula One what makes a winning team, they say it's continuity. Continuity of people like what they've got at Ferrari here. Michael Schumacher, Ross Brawn, Jean Todt, been in the job for years, been winning together for years. And continuity is what Honda have just thrown out of the window by getting rid of their technical director, Jeff Willis. And we heard a radio message in qualifying yesterday about what their current expectations really are.
Okay, Jenson, so anything's a bonus here. Just give it everything you've got.
A few months ago, Honda were fighting for pole position. Now they're just happy to be included in the top 10 shootout. The car's lack of pace has been blamed on technical director Jeffrey Willis, who's been replaced by Shuhei Nakamoto. We understand the Japanese bosses hadn't been happy with Willis for some time, and now his old friend Nick Fries says Jeff had taken the team as far as he could.
It's crazy just to continue to do the same thing and end up with the same results. Things don't change if you continue to do that, so we have to change things, and this portfolio of changes is aimed at making things even better for the future.
The timing of Willis's departure is misleading. Honda had their worst weekend of the season last time out at Silverstone, but while neither Jenson's qualifying mess-up nor his race retirement were Willis's fault, he's still the one being forced out. So were the team looking for a scapegoat?
And you don't base a decision on one race. You base a decision on a whole series of events. And Honda took over the team at the end of last year, and we've been carefully examining the best way for it to work. And this is the decision and the way forward that we've come up with.
But big changes like replacing your technical director in the middle of a season take time to settle in. And by restructuring the technical leadership, Honda might just have delayed their chances of future success. The move came as a shock to the drivers.
I mean, I get on with Jeff really well, but only the team can comment on that. I think we need to keep our feet on the ground and do a lot of work. This team deserves to win in the short future because of their work, and I think if the team thinks that's a good decision, so I will take it.
Jeff's departure leaves Rubens Barrichello and his engineer Jock Clear on the right here as the only two people on the race team who have experience of winning F1 races and championships. Getting rid of Jeff Willis is a big step. Jenson and Honda are hoping it's the right one.
evening to look back on a qualifying session that went reasonably to plan. Is it a small step in the right direction?
Yeah, definitely. I think after the last 2 races, I needed a good qualifying effort. Well, just a normal qualifying effort. So it's nice to be in the top 10 and to put the car where it deserves to be, really.
And it's good to come back to a circuit where some good things have happened for you and the team down the years. What are your memories of last year?
Last year was an interesting weekend. I still hadn't scored any points when we arrived here in Canada. Started on pole, was third by the first corner after the 2 runners got past. Was running in third when I put it in the wall, the famous wall, when I had Michael behind me. So disappointing weekend in all, and hopefully we can have a better one this year. I think we've got a good strategy. I think there's going to be some very different strategies going on tomorrow. It seems that the Renaults have gone quite short. You'd say the McLarens have split, the same as the Ferraris. You've got Trulli up there, and Rosberg, which is a bit of a surprise. So I think we're going to see some interesting pit stops in the first part of the race.
Changes of personnel behind the scenes here at Honda, which I suppose was inevitable after the first half of the season. Jeff Willis, good guy, popular guy. How difficult was that?
Well, I mean, having Nakamoto-san in the position he is now is very exciting, I think, for the team, and very exciting for Nakamoto-san. It's a big role for him, but I think he will slot in quite nicely into the role. With Jeff, I've worked with Jeff for many years now. I was with Jeff in 2000 at Williams, and when I came to the team, he was here also. So I've been working with him for 5 years of my career. So yeah, we've always had a very good relationship, but we haven't talked this past week, but I'm sure we'll catch up soon. A change like that in the personnel is not going to suddenly move us forward a big step. There are other areas we need to work on, as I said, and we will start seeing bigger changes in the future, which is very encouraging for the team, and especially the way things have gone so far this year.
You got the best out of things in qualifying. Go and have a good race now.
We will indeed.
Well, you do have to admire Jenson Button's continuing optimism, and it does seem that Honda know what the targets are, know what the problems are, know what needs to be done, but the action they've taken in the last week or so is fairly fundamental, isn't it, Mark?
It's very fundamental. They knew all those targets at the beginning of the season, the end of last season when they were testing, and they were qualifying at the front there. Now it's going backwards. Now there's a little bit of stabilisation as well, and they're having some personnel changes. Yeah, they're all hearing, we're listening to all that, and we're hearing the right things come back in terms of feedback, but I can tell you that's a big problem for the team at this moment. They need to get themselves really settled again for next year.
To a driver, what is the effect of losing a technical director halfway through the season?
It's a big effect, Steve. You're in there and you know that your long-term strategy on development is being directed primarily by one person with a group underneath him. And to see that guy actually, now get taken out the loop, gives you some issues that you need to contend with. You don't know whether it's a good thing in the long term or the short term. And you see that some of the team then need to work with new people, and it's difficult for them to get that relationship gelled halfway through the season. So it's not easy. It's not an easy process whatsoever.
Okay, well, let's tell you a little bit more about this Montreal circuit and admire once again Fernando Alonso's pole position lap of yesterday with the help of Martin Brundle.
The Gilles Villeneuve circuit for the Canadian Grand Prix, 2.7 miles. Pole position this year will be Fernando Alonso in a 1 minute 14.9 seconds. Let's take a look and see just how well his Renault is working. Onto the pit straight, building up to 190 miles an hour, flicking right at the end, and you're pointing directly at a wall as you brake heavily for turn 1. Sweep through at 90 miles an hour and down to a very pedestrian 50 for turn 2. Incredible traction. The car launches out towards 3. About 160 miles an hour. It's unsighted. Cascades downhill. This is the wall on the right that took him out of the Grand Prix last year. No problem. The flat, blind right-hander, turn 5. Heavy braking for 6. Clamber all over the curves to keep the nose of the car where you want it. So many of the corners ease through the exit, you can nail the throttle very early. It's a long, bumpy straight, 185 miles an hour. There's a bridge that forms a small tunnel. That's your braking point for turn 8. Again, loads of curve. He mashes the throttle pedal to the metal, and he's away again. Once more, 190 miles an hour, heading towards the hairpin. He'll brake 80 metres before the corner. He's missed this apex many times in free practice. No such problem on this hot lap. Now a very long straight, over 205 miles an hour at the exit. Listen to this 2.4 V8 screaming its head off, but this is a critical chicane. Bring it to the left-hand side and just watch the apex speed he takes through here. Across the curves, He trades the name of his tyres against the wall, and he's away. Keep it to the right-hand side for the shortest run down to the line. 5th consecutive pole for Alonso.
Well, it was a superb lap by Fernando to take pole, and Heikki Kovalainen, the Renault test driver, you've been testing this car in Monza all last week. What's it like on the fast circuits?
I think we have a very strong package on a low downforce configuration. It seems to be competitive. Obviously this year we've already proven it to be competitive than the other type of circuits, so I don't see any reason why we shouldn't win again today.
So is the team looking for the win, as you say, and the second place, a 1-2?
Yeah, of course, that's what we're hoping now. The starting positions are perfect to try to do that, but I think still some other teams will put on a good fight, and we still need to push.
A lot of stories going on about your future. Are you going to get the second Renault seat alongside Fisichella next year?
I don't know about that at the moment. There's, like you said, there's a lot of rumors going on and a lot of speculation, but the truth is at the moment that I still just focus on testing, and the team has told me to carry on testing like I've done. They will make a decision later on, and at the moment I don't really know what the decision will be.
Okay, thanks, Heikki.
Well, the circuit here in Montreal, set on the Île Notre Dame, an island in the middle of the St. Lawrence River, and the Canadian Grand Prix, a bit like the race in Melbourne, seems to bring this city alive. Fantastic weather in Montreal today, and a race that often seems to produce something really out of the ordinary. More build-up, including great Montreal moments and Martin Brundle's driving school, coming next. The pit lane in Montreal with about 40 minutes to go to the start of the Canadian Grand Prix. It's a place of some sporting tension, and a man who can identify with that kind of tension is watching things from here in the Williams pit. Luke Donald, welcome, European Ryder Cup golfer. How much of a Formula One fan are you?
Well, this is actually my first race I've ever been to, so I did follow it when I was growing up in England during the time when Nigel Mansell and Damon Hill were doing so well, but I've lost touch a bit, but it's nice to come here and see how they do it.
What are your impressions? What impresses you most about the sport, and also the guys behind the wheel?
Obviously very loud, very noisy, a little bit louder than golf, but it's amazing how much people are involved in the team. You really need a good team around the drivers to be successful, and it's a little bit similar to golf in that way. You need your caddy and you need your manager and everything, and these people are very important behind.
But one thing it does seem to have in common with golf, it is one of those sports where about 10 minutes before the start, about 10 minutes before you tee off or before the green light goes on, drivers and golfers still give interviews. What is it that makes you special and able to handle that kind of pressure?
Well, I think the racers actually do it more than we do, but I was surprised how much media they really do have to do, doing interviews all the time, exposing all the brands that they're showing off, but I think it's great for the public in that way. They get to see the races, and they get to see them all the time on the TV.
And your schedule now, pretty respectable in the US Open. What's the build-up to the Open Championship like for you?
Well, I'll be next week off, but then I play the Western Open in Chicago, and then I'll be over to Loch Lomond for the Scottish Open, and then following up at Hoylake for the Open Championship.
Okay, so you know all about how to fade a ball and draw a ball. Do you know much about oversteer and understeer?
Not too much. I was talking to one of the drivers, Ruben Barrichello. He's a big golf fan, and yeah. I said, I don't have a handicap in driving, but at least he has 11 handicapper in golf, so I think he's ahead of me in that way.
Well, you might enjoy watching this from Martin Brundle. He went down to Silverstone recently, a rather wet day at Silverstone, and he put together a kind of Martin Brundle Formula One driving school, a real Formula One inside. Now enjoy this and learn.
You'll often hear motor racing people talking about balance, oversteer and understeer. Using this Red Bull Formula One car, unusual camera angles and graphics, I'm going to demonstrate to you what it all means. Balance is the holy grail of race car setup. It means the front and the rear of the car slide in unison. Power and grip are nothing without balance. The driver needs consistency and confidence that the car is going to stick. The most frustrating aspect is understeer. Imagine arriving at a corner, I turn the wheel and the front doesn't bite enough. It starts running wide onto the dirty part of the racetrack. It doesn't steer enough, it understeers. I'm going to set this car up now to understeer, take it out onto the track and show you exactly what it feels like.
Okay, we're out on the track. We've taken some front wing off to make this car understeer. I've tightened the traction control up.
The red steering wheel shows when the car is sliding. Green means it's online. The two green lines sweeping ahead represent the ideal track position.
Down then, into Beckett. I'm going to turn in, and the front goes right across the road. I'm nearly up against the curb. Down 4 gears. Lots of grip here, turns in okay. Then it power understeers on the exit. As I try to put the throttle on to get out of the corner, the front is running wider and wider and wider.
Oversteer is the opposite problem and can easily lead to spinning the car. I'm going to set this Red Bull up now to oversteer by reducing the rear wing angle.
Get the nose in and wait for the back to slide. What a difference. So again, the nose goes in and immediately the back wants to slide. And you're trying to get the car out of the corner. It's so slow because you're just waiting for the slide to stop. I'm steering away from the corner to arrest the slide. It's called opposite lock, and the back wants to come out. So it gives you great turn in, which is rewarding, but then you can't get on the throttle as quickly as you want to because the back just won't stick.
Another way to change the balance and affect the handling of the car and say reduce understeer is to change the front suspension. For example, the spring or torsion bar can be reduced, as can the front anti-roll bar. The car will generally be softer and more compliant. The shock absorbers, or dampers as we call them, can also be changed to be stiffer or softer. The problem is, a soft car rolls around too much and lacks grip and feel. A stiff car will simply bounce along the racetrack. Let's reassemble the front suspension. The car should be nicely balanced. Take it out on the racetrack and see how it feels.
Into Cox Corner, fantastic grip. I can now build on each lap and place the car where I want it. I've got confidence I can get this together for an entire Grand Prix distance. Good grip at the moment, and it goes where I point it basically. I know exactly what it's going to do next. Look at that, I can hug the apex. The car's got grip, balance, poise.
Easy to talk about, difficult to achieve. The dynamics between the mechanical and aerodynamic forces as the car laps the track are extremely complex. But the end goal is always good balance.
Well, you watch that and you might feel with some justification that you know just about all there is to know about this sport of Formula One, but there's always room to question mark.
This week's email question comes from Richard Pauling in Buckinghamshire, and he asks, what can a driver adjust on the steering wheel to alter the performance of the car during the race? Well, we've got Anthony Davison here, Honda's test driver, to run us through those various buttons.
Yeah, well, there's a lot we can do during the practice sessions and in the race to adjust on the wheel. The main button we have here, the mixture mode for the engine, so going up the mode to increase power performance. Basically, we've got a pit confirm button to let them know, just to be sure when you're coming into the pits. You got your radio here, you flick it on that way just to talk for a 30-second burst. Yeah, you have your main rotary switch here. Goes through your display to let you know what modes you're actually currently in. Yeah, you have race start buttons. You have traction control on the right-hand side here. You can go up and down. And yeah, basically it's a really a lot of information that you can go through while you're actually going around. Generally it comes from the team telling you what modes to be in, but stuff like the differential here, to press the button up there, you can then go plus or minus on the modes to give you a tighter diff or a looser diff. Stuff like that you can change just all the way around the lap.
Okay, well, no air conditioning and no CD player, but plenty of buttons to think about.
Mark Webber is looking at all those buttons right now. The tyre warmers are off, and after a very disappointing qualifying session yesterday in which he felt he was balked by his teammate Nico Rosberg, Mark Webber heads out onto the grid in rather determined mood, and the rest of the cars are following them. Well, in that little question mark feature, well, Mark did suggest that the one button a Formula One steering wheel doesn't have is a button to control the in-car stereo. And here's the reason why.
Hi, this is Jacques Villeneuve. This is my first song, Accepterais-tu? I hope you enjoy it and look out for the album.
Je ne donnerai jamais assez pour mériter ce que tu m'apportes.
It's a way to let your brain relax and start thinking about other things. It puts you in a different place. Suddenly the world doesn't exist. You can close your mind, and it can be very relaxing, or it can make you think. It can have many different effects depending on what kind of music you put. And sometimes what you notice is the beat you put, your heartbeat, ends up going to a similar rate as the music you're listening to. So you have to really be careful what music you listen to. I've always been a very solitary player. I've always played with my own toys, with my own things, and I've always wanted to be better, always. Whatever I was doing, I just wanted to be better than everybody. I don't know if it comes from my dad, but to be strong mentally and not needing anyone has always been very important. So there's a lot of pride involved in that, and I would never accept myself if I actually needed someone from the outside to help me out.
Pour le souvenir, pour le passé, accepterais-tu de m'épouser?
The hills are alive with the sound of Villeneuve, and the circuit named after his father, Gilles Villeneuve, is alive with the sound of these cars heading out onto the grid. But he's an interesting character, Jacques Villeneuve. Complex sort of guy, isn't he?
He is indeed, but I don't think that's my cup of tea, that CD is going to release there, Steve. But, you know, it's good to see a driver doing something a little bit different. And Jacques is one of those guys who is quite deep, and you're going to see him doing a lot more of that, I'm sure.
And he's got a huge following here, all around the circuit as well, evidence of that.
He's got a massive following. You know, every time he walks out the door, a motorhome into that grandstand area, anything like that, there's a huge amount of people following him. Big following.
Well, we can forgive Jacques Villeneuve anything at this is home Grand Prix. Well, almost anything. It's the 38th staging of the Canadian Grand Prix, and in recent years it's provided us with some really tremendous entertainment.
He's absolutely distraught. Now they're going to stop the race, no doubt about that. Jacques Villeneuve is taking Fisichella for the lead. Fantastic, incredible, and into the gravel trap. That was predictable. Michael Schumacher slams out of turn 13 into the wall. Jacques Villeneuve has done exactly the same thing that Michael Schumacher did. And Damon Hill out of the race.
I just stepped outside the door and I felt a few drops of precipitation on my arm.
Ralf Schumacher wins the Canadian Grand Prix.
When the 5 lights go off, we'll be racing in Canada. Go! Michael Schumacher claims Ferrari's 150th Grand Prix victory. There's contact there with the two McLarens.
Fisichello's driven clean past him.
I am much quicker, even with this throttle. What more I have to do?
And oh, dear me, that's Button hitting the wall of champions. He's made an unforced error and hit the wall. Kimi Raikkonen in the McLaren Mercedes wins the Canadian Grand Prix of 2005.
Well, Toyota tester Olivier Panis no doubt has lots of good memories of this circuit. You raced here on about 10 occasions, I think. This track has produced some very memorable events over the years, hasn't it?
Yeah, it's a very important race, and all the time is middle of the season, more or less. I mean, and it's a special event here. I mean, for the ambience, for every day there's a lot of spectators, and for the race himself, all the time is something happen here.
Now, what about this year? Jarno sat just behind us, has qualified extremely well. Is he going to be able to match that pace in the race, though?
Well, we hope so, really. We are a bit, to be honest, surprised of the qualifying, because Jarno did very well, but also for the strategy point of view we have, I think we're on the pace. But now wait and see to pass the first corner, and we'll see afterward.
So we're not going to have a Trilly train like we had on various occasions last year?
To be honest, I hope so, really. I mean, I'm happy for him if he do a result, because he performed all the time very well, and he was not lucky this year.
Thanks, Olivier.
Thank you.
It's a circuit, Mark, that makes big demands on brakes. How does that affect the approach of the driver?
No, it's tough on the brakes. I mean, it's one of those circuits where you're hardened from a big speed and you're 4 or 5 times per lap, and brake wear is critical. 9 times out of 10 the teams get it right, but if you start to get a long pedal, mistakes can happen.
At the entry to the pit straight there, we've got the notorious Champions Wall. Now, down the years, why has this proved such a magnet to the big names in the sport?
You know, some of the problem with this chicane is the last part of the circuit when they're trying to complete their laps, whether it be a race lap or a qualifying lap, and you always try and just dive in a bit deeper. And you've seen time and time again, various people, Hill there just hitting the wall. It all starts low, Steve, from the beginning of the chicane. It's not the exit of it. The problem is when you actually turn in. You come into it on the brakes, you just get a little bit out of shape, and this is where the problem starts, and then you face off to that wall there. Time and time you'll see people get caught out with that.
You have to be absolutely so precise, and of course it caught Jensen out last year. He was leading the race, he started in pole position, another victim.
Oh, definitely so, and you know, Jensen, you see again, gets caught out slightly on the entry, a little bit too much speed, climbs over that inside curve and just bounces his car across to that outside wall. It happens, there's not much the driver can do, you're very much a passenger at that point, but you just feel very, very much, you know, upset with yourself that you've made such a crucial error.
One of the famous perils here on the circuit here in Montreal, and the race will be underway in about 20 minutes time. We'll be out on the grid with Martin Brundle very shortly. But just a reminder, between races, to keep up to date with everything that's happening on the ITV F1 website. On the website, you'll find all the news and background to what's going on in Formula One. It's also where you find details of all the ITV F1 competitions. Our latest winner correctly identified Indiana as the state in which Indianapolis stages the US Grand Prix. And Peter Slater of Trowbridge wins himself a VIP trip to the race next weekend. Now this week's competition.
We're giving you and a friend the chance to attend the biggest international historic motorsports event in the world, the Goodwood Festival of Speed, on the 7th, 8th and 9th of July. You'll get up close and personal with over 300 legendary bikes and cars in the grounds of glorious Goodwood House. You'll also be mingling with legends such as Nigel Mansell, Jackie Stewart, Colin McRae, Randy Momola and our very own Martin Brundle. You'll be chauffeur-driven by Jaguar to and from the event, stay in a luxury hotel on Saturday and enjoy VIP hospitality throughout the Sunday. But here's the best bit. You'll also be driven up the famous Goodwood Hill by 2-time Formula One world champion Mika Hakkinen. To be in with a chance then of winning this once-in-a-lifetime experience, answer the following question. Goodwood House is owned by which famous Lord? A. Lord March, B. Lord Morgan, C. Lord Morris. Call 0901 293 2020 or text F1 plus your answer of A, B or C to 63337. Entries cost £1 plus the standard network rates, and lines close midnight Tuesday the 27th of June.
You might hear in the background the sound of David Coulthard leaving the Red Bull pit. It's been hard work in there with an engine change which has relegated poor old David back to the rear end of the grid.
Yeah, DC's got a long, long day ahead of him, but you know, he's got the flexibility with fuel loads on board. He has an engine change, puts into the back of the grid. He just knows that he's in for a long day in the office, Steve, in that condition.
Michael Schumacher heading towards row 3, and for a Canadian Grand Prix that he's won an astonishing 7 times. He loves this place, doesn't he?
He is an expert round here, and this is very much a cross between a permanent road course and a temporary street circuit. And like we saw a little bit earlier there with some of those world champions hitting that wall, there's no margin for error. If you do make a mistake, you're going to pay for it around this kind of circuit.
What sort of strategy, what sort of joint strategy do you feel Ferrari might be on with Michael Schumacher on row 3, Felipe Massa a fair way back down that grid, row 5?
Well, I don't think there's much they can really consider at this moment in time. What they need to do is make sure they get in front of the likes of people like Trulli, because they're going to alter their race conditions very much if they don't keep up that strong pace at the beginning with the Renaults. If the heat keeps building up, it's going to come to the Bridgestone runners a little bit more, but they are in for a long day as well. Their pace has just not been up to scratch with the Renault guys.
We saw Nico Rosberg keeping cool and looking cool. He's alongside Michael Schumacher on row 3. And there's David Coulthard heading out to the grid, a little late. Midland Racing, they're a team with a kind of Canadian connection through their current owner, Alex Schneider. We saw Martin Brundle in the last half hour showing how sophisticated Formula One is. Well, here's the sophisticated manner in which Midland F1 driver Christian Albers introduces us to his team.
Hi, my name is Christian Albers, and I'm driving this car on the track. I'm going to introduce you to my mechanics. This is Mark, he's my number 1. How is it to work for me?
Brilliant.
He's lying, he's lying. And this is Chris. Chris, where are you, man?
Okay.
Chris is the guy who is always put me in the seat belts, because when I have a crash I want to be really tight. You know, I don't want to have big accidents. How is it?
Not bad.
Good?
It's going to get better, I think.
This is my engineer, Jody.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to work with Chris. He's a great guy, and you know, couldn't ask for a better driver, really.
Can you give me a tape of this? This is my guy from the rear of the car. How are you doing, Scott?
Fine, thanks. Yeah, it's good.
You like it here in Montreal?
Brilliant.
I heard you had a good time here last night.
That's just rumours.
No rumours, man. It's for real. So then we have Mick. He's also important, because he's taking care of all my stuff, you know, my overalls and my firework clothes and my helmets. And how do they smell good when I finish the race?
Really, no. Not at all, in fact.
Oh my God. Can we cut that? Can we cut that? And this is my big friend, really my big friend, Ron. You know, he's making always my stories more possible when I come out of the car. How was your practice? It was really, really, really bad. And then you read down the press release, you see, oh, I had a reasonable day today, and maybe we're going to do some better job tomorrow. So thanks, Ron. And without these guys, I can't do a really good job on the track, so I'm really happy to work with them, and they're a great team behind Christian Albers. Thanks.
And here is Christian Albers' car down on the grid. Let's just grab another word with his number 1 mechanic, Mark. Mark, just talk us through what actually is going on now, just a few minutes before the start of the race.
Hi. Yeah, it's just the final checks, really. All the engineers are checking through the data that we got on the way to the grid. The mechanics are just checking around the car. It's really our last chance to check everything on the car and get quite hot in this sun.
Is it just a security thing? I mean, presumably you've done everything you can. It's just finger checks to make sure there's nothing gone wrong.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah. Yeah, it's just a peace of mind for us, I think.
Going to have a good race today?
I hope so, yeah.
Well, let's go and find out from your driver what he thinks. Christian, yes. How's it looking for today?
Bad, because I need to go to the toilet. And it was a really difficult weekend, but just we're gonna do our best and you know, just push. It was really difficult for me this weekend. I couldn't find the right setup, and hopefully the race goes better.
I hope so. Off you go.
Thanks.
There's Johnny Herbert looking after it all, and they say there are no characters left in Formula One, but look at guys like Christian Albers, Scott Speed as well. They're not short of confidence, are they?
No, they're enjoying their racing, but I think Christian maybe paid his mechanics a little bit extra there to be so positive about him. I'm sure he's got some downside somewhere, but a great guy.
The city of Montreal showing how close this circuit on the Ile de Notre Dame is to the hub of things in Montreal. And Felipe Massa back on row 5 alongside Rubens Barrichello, and an interesting strategy possibly from Ferrari, but Renault's approach as they dominate the front row for the second time this season will be what?
Definitely. I don't think anybody can compete with them guys at the moment. They really are on a roll, and every time they go out you just know that there's going to be something special produced, very much like we've seen in the past with other teams. But once the team gets on top, it's difficult to knock them off their perch. Ferrari are about the only people at this moment who can maybe do that, Steve, but I still don't see it happening quite at this moment.
Nico Rosberg there had an interesting day yesterday, incurred the wrath of A couple of people on the grid, not least his own teammate Mark Webber, but he's a confident guy. He won't be affected by that. He's growing into the sport, isn't he?
He won't be affected at all by that. He's got no qualms of doing whatever he needs to do out in the circuit to get the best result, and that's exactly what he did for his team. He's produced a result. You know, Keke Rosberg, his father, is a tough character as well, and I'm sure some of that's rubbed off on Nico's shoulders, and he's now focused on his race today.
Well, that's how the spectators arrived to this Montreal circuit across the St. Lawrence Waterway, especially the spectators who are being accommodated in the Formula One Paddock Club. And it's a day for keeping cool, for rolling the trouser legs up and trying to stay cool somehow in temperatures in the 80s around the river and also on that grid as well. Let's see who Martin Brundle can find down on the grid. Let's join Martin. No, Martin not quite ready for us. And they're keeping cool out there on the river. And I think Martin is ready for us now. Let's get down onto the grid. Martin.
Thank you, Steve. Well, it's a very short run from the front of the grid down into the first corner there. And often we've seen a lot of dramas at the start of Grand Prix. Now, these Renaults are mighty off the start. It's the second phase where they really seem to get away better than anybody else. They leave the line about the same speed, and then they just accelerate and take off. And there's still more than enough space for them to get the job done on the way down. Now, it's super hot on the track, much hotter than anything we saw during qualifying. You can feel it through the soles of your feet, and blistering of the tyres and brakes are going to be a key issue. And Pat Simmons was just saying to me, what do you think some teams may have not allowed enough for is the fact that they do so many laps, those top 10 in the third phase of qualifying, and they're not allowed to change the brakes. So they're asking ever more of them this afternoon. Now let's see if we can find a driver. They're just warming up the Renault here to, I don't think Fizzy's back on the grid yet. An amazing amount of gubbins that they bring onto the grid. Look at this little trolley here, just full of generators, spare set of tyres. They've got, obviously they're still heating them as hard as they can to, despite this amazing track temperature, they want to still put as hot a tyre as they can on, and also Alonso will be putting as much energy into those brake discs you can see at the back of the car there. So generally quite a lot of servicing going on here. The McLaren, what a beautiful piece of kit that is. The absolute canine undercarriage of a racing car and a colour scheme. But Raikkonen then is the man who's got the best grandstand seat to see just how well the Renaults get off the line. Jarno Trulli in fourth. Now I think he could be a real spoiler today for the Ferrari team. He's really put in a stunning lap. I don't know if we can find him anywhere on the grid. Jarno, is he around? Can you see him? No, Jarno Trulli's off the grid. And let's have a little look for Nico Rosberg, because he seemed to be in the wars a little bit. Here he is, looking extremely cool. You're looking cool, calm and collected, Nico?
Yeah, no, it's going to be an interesting race. I mean, qualifying went really well for me yesterday, so starting sixth, I hope that we can achieve some good things today.
Good stuff. Now, you were in the wars a little bit. You know, they were having a bit of a moan about you in qualifying. I guess you don't care much.
Well, yes, of course. You gotta try and not do these kind of things. But in the end, Barrichello said something. He got through, so it wasn't a problem. But I need to be careful in future. And with Mark, it didn't really cost him that much. It cost him a 10th.5, and it wouldn't have changed anything for him. So I mean, I've learned also that in this sport you got to be a bit of an egoist to achieve things. Because I've been too nice in the past, and then you get hammered. So. That's the way to go.
Every man for himself, and what goes around comes around. So it's pretty hot out there today. Are you expecting a tough race?
Yeah, of course, it's going to be tough. Yeah, I think so. And we got to see, the tires are a bit of an unknown situation at the moment still, so I hope that they go well, and we'll see.
We're looking forward to watching you. Let's. Here's an interesting little guy, Frankie Muniz, Malcolm in the middle, maybe the younger generation watching the program today, and Cody Banks as well from the movies. Now you're a movie star. You're just 21 years old, but you want to be a racing driver.
Yeah, I've put acting on hold for right now, and I'm racing in the Formula BMW series, and hope to be here one day. But we'll see. I raced this morning and yesterday here, and it's awesome. I have so much fun.
How did it go?
It went well. I had a really good start, and then like the third lap, my teammate crashed me. But other than that, it was great. I learned a lot, you know, in the 4 laps I got to run, but it was fun.
Okay, and you'll really give up movies for
for racing driving?
Well, you know, this is a lot more fun. You know, it's a totally different world, but I love it, and I'd love to be able to do it. So we'll see.
Okay, good stuff. And you're with Red Bull today, I believe. So you're fighting for those guys?
Yeah, Scott Speed, American.
All right, good luck. Great to see you. Let's just see if we can find Jenson Button before we head back to Steve. Is he? Yeah, here he is. Look. Gents, quick word. I know we spoke to you earlier in the programme. Just find how's the track looking out there? You've done the reconnaissance lap. Any more news for us just before the off?
No, it's nice and clean, which is good. And yeah, looking forward to the race. You know, it's going to be an interesting one. It's pretty hot. And there's a couple of cars in front of us which we're surprised about. So it should be interesting, I think.
Okay, mate. Good luck and stay out of that wall. And we'll see you later. And we're back to Steve.
Thanks, Martin. What do you think Honda can achieve today, Mark? And what do you think Jenson might be able to achieve?
I think Jenson's got a fair shout of pulling off a top 5, a top 6 result. But, you know, at this moment in time, there's probably a lot more that they're even considering as the season goes and rolls out. But it's going to be difficult for Jenson to really get back on song and look for those podiums, which he's been used to over the last couple of seasons. So hopefully we might see that, but it's a top 6 result to be realistic.
We saw Fernando Alonso there climbing into his overalls. There's his team boss Flavio Briatore on the right, and he seems to have reached that wonderful point for a racing driver where he and the car seem to be one at the moment.
Definitely. I think anybody at the top of their game, whether it's in golf, whether it's football, whatever it may be, once you get that harmonisation together, there's no stopping those people, and we're sort of seeing history written all over again. We've seen it for so many years with Schumacher and Ferrari, and now we're seeing a new generation.
And it's not just a driver, it's a team that's getting absolutely everything right, isn't it?
100%. You're only as good as a team of people behind you in this job, and you know, there's a lot of guys there who need to get a lot more credit than will actually end up getting. But it's a great thing for the driver when the team's on a roll.
England flags are flying strong. England have beaten Ecuador by a 0-0. They're through to the World Cup quarter-finals, none of which matters to Mark Webber, who's way back in 17th position on that grid. And it does seem that the heat is a big factor down there as that grid forms, and it's a big talking point all around this circuit. But the grid will be clearing shortly, the minutes tick away, and when we return it'll be for the final countdown to the start of this Canadian Grand Prix. Hurry up, Martin.
Естественно, надеются на то, что моторы выдержат, на то, что выдержат тормоза. Вы помните, у Уильямса и у Тойоты, чей пилот Ярн Труль сейчас на ваших экранах, были даже проблемы с дисквалификацией из-за того, что чуть больше оказались воздухозаборники тормозов пару лет назад, чем это положено, потому что здесь, еще раз, длинные прямые, но и жесточайшие торможения после них, и иногда не хватает выносливости тормозов, но команды много работали на тестах, как в Монце, так и на Поле Рикаре, разбились силами. Лишь Мидланд работал в одиночке в Сильверстоуне. Мидланд здесь практически домашняя гонка, как об этом заявляли пресс-релизы команды, интервью Алекса Шнайдера, поэтому выступить хочется очень неплохо Тиаго Монтейро и Кристиано Альверсу, но квалифицированы они вместе на этот раз лишь на 10-м из 11 рядов стартового поля. Впрочем, подробнее о стартовой решетке мы с вами обязательно поговорим, но лишь через несколько минут, друзья.
On the Ile Notre Dame, the circuit named in honor of the great Gilles Villeneuve is bathed in warm Montreal sunshine. And we're about to reach the halfway point of this Formula One season with the Canadian Grand Prix. Commentary from Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Montreal. Well, as Steve was saying, the Canadian Grand Prix is always a special date on the Formula One calendar. It's a beautiful setting. The weather is dazzling. And the track, well, it has a habit of delivering exciting races, as we've heard. This is a circuit which defies predictions. Only once in the last 6 years has the pole sitter gone on to win the race. And for the last 2 years, the winner has come from outside the top 5 on the grid. Well, Renault may have annexed the front row here yesterday in qualifying thanks to a raft of aerodynamic changes on their car, but this is their bogey circuit. Both of the cars have retired here for the last 2 years, and I wonder, can they turn that around today? Certainly on the face of it, it looks like an in-house battle between
Alonso and Fisichella. And it was interesting yesterday, at the end of qualifying, Alonso felt the need to go out and do an extra run at the very end of the qualifying session. The track had got faster. He used up a new set of tyres to do it, but he felt a threat, and a real threat, from his teammate Fisichella. McLaren looked sharper this weekend. Kimi Raikkonen has qualified in the top 3 for the 3rd race in a row, and they look like they're building a bit of momentum here this weekend. BMW Williams the subject of a great deal of controversy. That rear wing there, the whole saga of the flexi wing, continues. We've had clarifications. They have to have space, as you can see there, the thing that's holding that central vertical bit on the wing. Everybody has to put that on, but everybody trying to improve their straight line speed, and flexibility in the rear wing allows the car to travel a little bit faster in a straight line. It's a saga, I think, that's going to run and run for the rest of the season, because having cut 200 horsepower out of the engines with the switch from V10 down to V8, everybody just wants to go faster in a straight line, and they're coming up with some very, very clever ways of doing that. Well, there's the starting grid. You can see that Trulli is in front of Michael Schumacher, and that could be quite important here this afternoon. We think that Schumacher has got a few more laps of fuel in his car than the people in front of him, but he has been struggling this weekend to get the Bridgestone tyres to work. Trulli, the fastest Bridgestone qualifier then. He's gone for the softer tyre, as has Rosberg on the Bridgestone, but Michael Schumacher and Massa went for the harder tyre. So it'll be interesting to see how they perform over the course of the season. Button there solidly back in the top 10 after the disasters of Silverstone a fortnight ago, with his teammate Barrichello as well. Villeneuve and Heidfeld were both extremely fast in free practice, but they got it wrong yesterday in qualifying, which is why they're just outside the top 10. So watch out for them this afternoon. Their pace is pretty special. And poor old David Coulthard there at the back of the grid has engine penalty, and that drops him to the back of the grid. Amazingly though, Martin, if you look at Albers and Montero, there they are. They've got 16 cars between themselves and the pace setter Alonso, and the difference between them in the qualifying lap was 2 seconds.
Hey Steph, is my engine nice and cold or what?
Yeah, Cosworth is looking after them quite well. They're all smiling, so must be cold enough.
I'm just saying, when I come off the track and we start going over the days and I find out that Tonio's engine's 5 degrees cooler than mine again, someone's head's gonna roll.
I bet he doesn't know he's broadcasting that one to the world.
I bet he does.
But he's talking about differences between the cooling of the cars and how the engine covers fit and the vents that are in them, and it surprises me that his mind is on that one at the moment. But I wonder if he was confusing his engine with a vodka and Red Bull or whatever he likes to drink, because there's not a lot he can do about, or anybody else can do about, the absolute temperature of that engine. Now it's all over in that respect. The cars are going to do and be what they are. But there's a man who could play a big part in today's race, Jarno Trulli, and can very much interfere with the Ferrari progress of Michael Schumacher. Schumacher will be absolutely desperate to pass him at some point in the first lap.
There's young Nico Rosberg. Said you need to be a bit egotistical in this business, and I think a lot of people in the paddock would agree with that. Certainly his teammate Mark Webber, well bent out of shape by being blocked by young Rosberg yesterday in qualifying.
I said to David Coulthard, why don't you start in the pit lane, because there's often so much aggravation in the first couple of corners, but apparently here they don't release you from the pit lane, because the pit lane enters the track at turn 2, not turn 1. They don't release you out of the pit lane until all of the cars have cleared turn 2, so it's even more of a penalty than normal.
Everyone going away then on their formation lap. A really good crowd here, knowledgeable, enthusiastic, and a crowd that still really gets the romance of Formula One, thanks to the heritage of the great Gilles Villeneuve, after whom this circuit is named. So Alonso is going to lead the World Championship, as you can see, whatever happens coming away from this Grand Prix. But that 23-point margin that Schumacher has to him, really these two North American races, absolutely vital if Schumacher is to mount a championship charge in the second half of the season. Ferrari have got some momentum. They've got a new engine here this weekend, aerodynamic upgrades as well. Renault just trying to always keep themselves out of reach, but I fancy that this afternoon the track is going to come towards Michael Schumacher and Ferrari, a little bit like it did in Monaco. If you remember that stunning drive Schumacher put in on a very hot afternoon in Monaco, and from the back of the grid. I fancy it might be a little bit like that today. He's certainly a contender for a podium, and if anything happens to these Renaults on this their bogey circuit, then he and Kimi Raikkonen waiting to pounce. But it's hard to imagine how Schumacher could have a better second half to the season than the one Alonso's had in the first half. He's only dropped 6 points so far, so a good result here and Indianapolis next Sunday, and Alonso really is looking pretty much home and dry in the championship, barring any big mechanical retirements.
Everybody recovering to the pit lane. Of course, if there's an aborted start, they've all got to rush straight back out there again. It's quite a drama getting all of that equipment I'm showing you on the grid on and off the racetrack, but they all need to be well clear, of course. Right, you ugly lot, we need a good, clean start. We do not want this Grand Prix being extended and getting messed about by football matches later on. We need this lot to be exemplary in the way that they drive the first lap, and then we want to see some good hard action, plenty of overtaking.
Well, it's certainly a track where you get a lot of events. There's lined by walls. That's one of the main reasons the driver make a mistake, unlike a lot of these new circuits where they fly off into an endless amount of runoff area. Here, you hit a wall if you make a mistake, and there are quite a few parts of this circuit where it takes a while to recover the damaged car, and really the only safe way of doing that is for the race director to deploy the safety car to slow the field down while the cranes come in and hoist the cars out of the way. For that reason, we have had 5 safety cars in the last 7 years here in Montreal. Let's hope we don't get any today. Let's have a nice clean race, as Martin says.
Oh, a long gap behind Trulli there. Michael Schumacher backing the pack up a lot, trying to give himself a bit more tyre temperature in those Bridgestones. That's a canny move.
Also allowing, of course, the Renault engine to get hotter and hotter and hotter, just sitting there for what is going to be a very long time. We are overlooking the final chicane at the back of the pit straight, and the final car's Coulthard has only just gone past us, so there's at least another 10 or 15 seconds to go before the final car's back up. Pat Simmons there on the right, in charge of the technical side of operations at Renault, looking a little concerned as the temperatures go up and up in those Renault engines. They've been waiting a long time now.
Nightmare time for all of the engine engineers.
70 laps of this race then. It's going to be very tough on the brakes, tough on the drivers. It's baking hot here in Montreal, and we're getting underway. Right now, a little move there by Fisichella, possibly a jump start. And anyway, he had to hit the brakes and Raikkonen jumped him. A little bit too impatient then on the getaway for Giancarlo Fisichella. Trulli is into 4th place, but Raikkonen up into 2nd. Michael Schumacher has lost a place to Rosberg, and he might lose another one to Montoya. Side by side, wheel to wheel, the 3 of them down to turn 3. Rosberg goes through. Still Montoya and Schumacher are side by side. Who comes out in front? It's Montoya.
Michael surely had to go along the grass, because he locked his brakes, trying to go around the outside of Montoya. So the canny move to back the pack up didn't give him any advantage, had a nightmare of a start. But I'm expecting that Fisichella might be penalised. He definitely jumped the lights. Although the car was stationary, it doesn't really matter. If you've moved before those lights, it's game over for a jump start.
It was a fractional movement. Look at Raikkonen attacking Alonso at the front. Alonso leads, Raikkonen 2nd, Fisichella 3rd, Trulli 4th, Rosberg 5th. Bit of a spinner there. Who was out of the hairpin?
Yeah, somebody looking as if he was turning completely the wrong way when he got hot on the brakes into the hairpin. We'll flash back to that. I wonder if Raikkonen would be close enough to have a look at Alonso into the final chicane, but he doesn't. And Rosberg, Nico Rosberg there, jumps through the chicane. Will not be penalised for that, but he may well have Montoya passing him down into turn 1, and his penalty will be taken that way. But he didn't gain or lose a position, and he's managed to keep it all together. So a hot moment for a young head, but then he collected himself nicely. But now Montoya at the inside. Surely he's got the right line, and there's no point, Nico, trying to do that. There was absolutely no point. And you'd lost the corner, and now you're both out of the race.
Oh, that was so unfortunate. Side by side, you could tell from Montoya. I was talking about safety cars and walls. Well, he's shaking his head. I think everybody's shaking their head at that one. Safety car standing by. I'm sure that Charlie Whiting will deploy it. That is one of the Midlands. Both of the Midlands, Montero and Albers, seem to... I don't know if they've made contact with each other. Safety car is being deployed. But the 2 Midlands were the cars we saw having problems at the hairpin on the opening lap. And there is Nico Rosberg. His 2nd best performance in Formula 1 in qualifying yesterday, but certainly not his best performance on the opening laps of a Grand Prix here this afternoon. A new nose cone standing by for Juan Montoya.
Yeah, Montoya obviously carried on, but let's see how much damage. His suspension would have taken quite a knock there. But Nico very much had to recognise he'd lost that corner. So under safety car conditions, Alonso leads the race.
Монтейра в боксах, естественно, ему также меняют крыло, оно явно сломано. Что касается Монтоя, вот так визуально, ну, на общем плане, по крайней мере, не казалось, что его машина повреждена, но контакт все же был у него с Нико Росбергом. Именно после этого контакта молодой фин по происхождению, молодой немец по паспорту, и оказался в стене, но не в стене чемпионов, тем не менее, также эмблему и герб века мы на ней видели. Так вот, Росберг прогрессировал по ходу уикенда. Вчера в первой части квалификации у него даже был небольшой контакт об стену, но все закончилось благополучно. Он потом, улыбаясь, сказал, что его отец советовал ему использовать каждый миллиметр здесь пространства. Вот Нико и использовал. И это едва не закончилось плохо, но не закончилось. Он смог пройти во второй и в третий сегмент, квалифицироваться очень неплохо шестым. Затем на старте опередить Михаэля Шумахера, шел на 5-м месте. Чуть-чуть пытался атаковать Ярно Трулли с одной стороны, с другой отражать атаки Монтоя, которому в итоге мы видим меняют передний спойлер. И Монтоя, потеряв на это много времени. В прошлом году он лидировал в этой гонке, может быть, мог бы ее выиграть. Но когда на трассе появился пейскар, заехали в боксы, команда, в общем, так не очень оперативно, может быть, сработала по радио. И в итоге Хуан Пабло Монтоя стал в некотором роде жертвой этой ситуации, поскольку на выезде он горел красный светофор. И так много времени было потеряно. Может быть, мог бы быть потерян даже целый круг. Так или иначе, но Хуан Пабло Монтоя, в общем, тогда выехал под этот красный светофор, в итоге получил черный флаг, полную дисквалификацию, даже не наказание, и был вынужден сойти с дистанции, а выиграл его партнер по команде Кими Райконен. И вот это было таким первым пунктом проблем между Хуаном Пабло и, естественно, Роном Деннисом, потому что в свое время Рон Деннис, когда звал Монтою в команду, он обещал, что никогда ситуация, которая у Монтои была в Вильямсе, между, соответственно, Хуаном Пабло и Ральфом Шумахером, его тогдашним партнером по команде, не повторится. Однако же эта ситуация повторялась, причем уже несколько раз. И, в общем, сейчас, конечно, ситуация в команде. Алонсо подписал уже контракт. Кими, скорее всего, уходит, даже если об этом пока не говорится. Если он вдруг решит остаться, Монтоя места не будет. Даже если он решит уйти в Рено или в Феррари, команда намекает все больше и больше, что, скорее всего, темнокожий Льюис Хэмилтон, британец, выступающий в чемпионате ГП2, лидирующий сейчас с огромным отрывом в этом чемпионате, займет место. А Монтоя начал было подыскивать варианты. Ну, по слухам, ему все-таки предложили продление контракта в Макларене, но резко срезав зарплату. Ну, пока, вот вы видите, у нас технические проблемы, ничего не получается сделать, грозы, естественно, и всякое возможно. Я вам предлагаю пока прерваться на рекламную паузу. Будем надеяться, что пейскар еще на трассе, и будем надеяться, что он останется на трассе, когда реклама закончится, друзья. К этому моменту, может быть, мы получим возможность видеть картинку из Монреаля.
Welcome back to Montreal. This is lap 4 of the Canadian Grand Prix. The safety car has just pulled into the pit lane. Alonso is leading this race from Raikkonen. Montagna, you can see there, has just pulled off the racetrack. Montoya has come into the pits for a new nose cone. Nico Rosberg is already out of this race. He's collided with Montoya in the opening stages of this Grand Prix at a difficult place. Brought out the safety car while the marshals got the car away from that awkward position. That's now clear, and we are now racing with Alonso in front of Kimi Raikkonen, who jumped Giancarlo Fisichella at the start, but the stewards have told us that that jump start that Martin and I both thought we saw was in fact, they're looking at it too, and we've seen a replay of it, and it clearly did get moving before the lights went out. So we expect a penalty for Giancarlo Fisichella for jumping the start. So all the good work he did, getting himself up to the front of the grid, seems to have been undone. This is Juan Montoya cutting his way through the field. He's now into 18th place, and that's David Coulthard in front of us. Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, and it looks like the Renault pit wall are expecting a penalty as well. They're not looking very happy about that. But Fisichella's going to go himself to blame. But on Montoya, James, he did take on about 3-4 seconds of fuel. So that will see him up to about lap 35-40, which is about well into the one-stop territory.
Okay, the Colombian Montoya recovering there, having pitted for a new nose and a good look around the suspension after that collision with Nico Rosberg, but there was a yellow flag waving down into turn 14 where he just overtook Coulthard. So I don't know whether he got the move clear before he got to the yellow flag zone, but it was extremely close. So we'll watch out for that. But I'm absolutely sure now that Fisichella will take a penalty. But that's working out beautifully for Michael Schumacher, because Rosberg was ahead of him, as was Montoya, and as is Fisichella. So having had a dismal start, Michael's going to find himself moving forward quite quickly, at least up to the gearbox of this Toyota of Jarno Trulli.
Yeah, Michael Schumacher lost 2 places at the start to Rosberg and Juan Montoya, but they took each other out down at turn 3. He is sitting behind Jarno Trulli then, some 4.5 seconds behind race leader Fernando Alonso. Well, Montoya, we've been hearing about from Ted Kravitz about the strategy going one stop. Don't forget, here last year, Rubens Barrichello started from the pit lane and he got a podium on a one-stop strategy, so it can be done, and McLaren have done exactly the right thing for him. Let's hear now about the Midland situation. We saw the 2 cars getting, did they tangle with each other? We're not sure. Let's find out if they did from Louise Goodman, who's with Sporting Director of Midland, Johnny Herbert.
Well, let's just put exactly that question to Johnny. What's happened? Have your guys tangled with each other?
It's difficult to say. The only shot we got was probably what you guys saw, and it just, you could see that I think Christian was stopped, then you just saw Thiago pulling away, but it's difficult to know if they've come involved with something else and then just collected each other afterwards. It's very difficult to know. I'm going to find out.
Is that the politically correct answer?
No, I don't actually know at the moment. I haven't had time to get over there.
Thiago's been into the pits. What did you have to do to his car?
No, exactly. Well, that's why I haven't had time to get over there. But it was just basically he'd had a nose damage, so that had to change the nose. I think it was a little bit of a winglet on the side pod, but that had to take off and new tyres, and he's back out again.
Thanks, Johnny.
Yeah, well, we're watching, here is that replay. What happens? Yeah, one very much gets into the other. The teams, as we do, watch the world feed. So on the pit wall, they're only seeing exactly what we're seeing, but clearly, and Michael Schumacher has a bit of a sneaky look, but nowhere near close enough for pass, and Jarno Trulli's got to get past him. They're losing 1.5 seconds a lap to the leaders, and it's exactly as we expected, that Michael's race is being compromised by Trulli's pace. But I'm looking more and more at that Montoya, Nico Rosberg. I mean, Nico was definitely ahead of him, but if you notice, when Montoya passed Michael in this corner on the first lap, Michael conceded in the end and went across the grass, and that's what Nico should have done. By turning in, he was guaranteeing an accident. Whose ever fault it was, he was guaranteeing an accident.
Well, it was great to see that replay again of Montoya and Michael Schumacher. They've had a few scraps over the years, and how close were their wheels to each other. 2 high quality professionals managing to get through that corner without hitting each other, and it's not a slow corner either. They've been doing about 85 miles an hour with their wheels no more than a cigarette paper apart. Mark Webber has made up 6 places at the start. You can see quite a few people have gained. Villeneuve is up into the points from 11th on the grid. Watch out for those BMWs. They were very quick in practice. Just to bring you up to date with a couple of other matters, we have been notified of a drive-through penalty for car number 2, Giancarlo Fisichella. He may well take it now. In fact, he does. Into the pits he comes, and that's for jumping the start.
He's got 3 complete laps before he has to serve that, and he would want to go as far as he could, because his pace means he may well not come out absolutely last. But he's going to be a long way down the field, so he doesn't have to stop at his pits. They can't do any work on it or refuel it, even if they wanted to. So where's he going to feed back out? In front of Button, by the looks of it. So Fisichella will feed back out in 5th place.
Yeah, there was a 4.5 second gap between Michael Schumacher, who's just gone through the frame, and Jenson Button, and Fisichella has fed back into that in 5th place. So that's another place gain for Michael Schumacher.
That works, though, doesn't it? He clearly jumped the start, and so he's had a penalty as such without absolutely wrecking the rest of the afternoon. So Fisichella back in play with a fast car underneath him. A race victory will now depend on a major problem for Alonso or Raikkonen, but he can still get on the podium from there. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Well, this year, for the first time, Formula One has a permanent steward who goes to every single race. The idea being to provide consistency in the decision-making process for these kind of penalties. Tony Scott Andrews, an English lawyer, is that man, and so far you'd have to say a reasonably steady hand on Mattila. Some good decisions been made, particularly the Schumacher incident in Monaco. The punishment certainly fitted the crime for Schumacher parking out in qualifying. Alonso leading the race then. Raikkonen, the fastest man on the racetrack that last time through, though. He's not letting Alonso get away. Trulli is 3rd. Michael Schumacher is 4th. 5th is Fisichella. 6th, Jenson Button. 7th, Jacques Villeneuve. 8th, Felipe Massa. 9th, Heidfeld, and 10th, Webber.
Right, Michael there twiddling the knobs on the steering wheel. That's the 2nd time. I suspect he's been told, turn up the mixture, turn up the revs. You've got to pass that Toyota.
Certainly looks like it. At the moment, he is losing ground. He's almost 10 seconds now behind the race leader, Fernando Alonso. Well, 70 laps of this racetrack are murder on the brakes of these Formula One cars. There are 5 places on this circuit where they have to stop from over 175 miles an hour, and one place where they stop from over 200 miles an hour. That's into the final chicane. And when they do that, the brake discs heat up to a temperature of 950 degrees centigrade. That's one of the places here, into the hairpin. 950 degrees centigrade. And to give you some sort of idea of reference, a pizza oven runs at about 300 centigrade, and a volcano erupts at just over 1,000 degrees centigrade. So it's not much less than the temperature of an erupting volcano. And, well, it's a big ask on the brake discs to make it around 70 laps of this place.
Raikkonen, a new fastest lap of the race on a 1:16.8, just shavings and fractions faster than Alonso, who continues to lead. But they've got a 9.6-second gap now back to Jarno Trulli in 3rd place. Michael Schumacher in very close company for 4th, and that is Montoya scrabbling across, and he'll have to let Ralf Schumacher back in. If he passed Schumacher at the chicane, he'll have to let him back pass through, and he has done, and then have another go at him. So what an eventful afternoon for both the Colombian Montoya and Coulthard. Coulthard's had a difficult weekend with all sorts of problems on the Red Bull, and then they found an engine problem very late in the morning, so he had to start from the very back, and those two struggling down there in 16th and 17th.
Well, Juan Montoya knows all about trouble and strife here in Montreal. If you recall last year's race, he had a great opportunity to win it, and a safety car was deployed. McLaren brought his teammate Raikkonen, who was behind him on the racetrack at the time. They brought him in first, and it completely compromised Montoya's afternoon. He had to pit when the pit lane exit was closed. It was red light. Montoya just got the red mist and just drove straight out and completely ignored the red light, so of course was disqualified. And the year before that with Williams, he was disqualified for illegal brake ducts. So he's had a miserable time in the last couple of years here in Montreal, despite being enormously quick here.
It doesn't seem to be his kind of place, and he really does need, Michael Schumacher really does need to clear the sister car of this Toyota Jarno Trulli, just as Montoya needs to clear Ralf. So poor pace for the Toyota. We'll see how much fuel they've got on. Maybe they're going quite long. What else is going on? We've got Villeneuve up in 7th place. He started 11th. I wouldn't be at all surprised he's not trying an unusual strategy this afternoon, Jacques Villeneuve, so we'll watch out for him as the race unfolds. But Raikkonen's got the gap down now to Alonso to just 0.6 of a second, and he's consistently faster around the laps, and that's the net result down at the hairpin.
Yeah, the two front cars right together on the racetrack. And you're right about the situation for Villeneuve. Because he qualified outside the top 10, he can specify whatever fuel load he wants to start this Grand Prix. Obviously, the top 10 runners had to carry their first stint race fuel in qualifying yesterday, so they won't want to have carried too much, whereas Villeneuve probably can go quite a few laps longer than the cars in front of him. So he is looking very good indeed, certainly with regards to the cars he's racing against this afternoon, particularly Button in 6th place. Ted Kravitz, what can you tell us?
Keller is going to be able to make the podium, we would have thought, certainly make up for that drive-through penalty, James, because he's just crossed the line, and what's he doing, 17.6, and Michael and Trulli have managed to up the pace, but I think they're going to have to take a long-term view on this Renault, because you can't overtake here really unless you're much faster. So I think Fisichella's going to have to wait for the stops before he try and overtake Michael and Trulli.
Thank you for that, Ted. And Juan Montoya has now got past, while Ted was talking to us, the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher. So Montoya moves up into 15th place now. David Coulthard behind him, 17th, having started from the back of the grid following an engine change. Alonso leading then on lap 12, just 0.6 of a second the margin to Raikkonen, and it's really very close between these two. This is the race we didn't get at Silverstone in a way, and we were certainly expecting it, the McLaren, to be on form. Here is Raikkonen lining up Alonso here down the back straight. Is he going to go for a pass? He looks at it, down the outside. Alonso takes the inside line.
Yeah, we've seen how quick Montoya is down the straight in the sister McLaren, and so then is Kimi Raikkonen. He should get a better run off the corner, but doesn't. But that's going to happen, isn't it? That pass is going to happen. He's got so much more speed down the straight, and Alonso unusually under pressure. Gap down to 0.2 of a second, and it looks like Raikkonen's got a solid 4 or 5 kilometers per hour, 3 miles an hour, plus of course the toe. And it's a long straight. It's a 1 kilometer straight, and plenty of chance to get in the big hole in the air, the big vacuum in the air that Alonso's Renault is making as it pushes the air aside. The drag that comes off the back of his car creates a very nice suction to give you a bit of a slipstream. Barrichello pits for Honda from what was 13th place.
So he was one of the top 10 qualifiers, Rubens Barrichello. Started this race from 9th on the grid, and he did it by running quite a light fuel load, 13 laps of fuel. So to see whether he 3 stops here this afternoon. But look at this, the 2 contenders for last year's World Championship, Kimi Raikkonen and Fernando Alonso. Raikkonen quite a long way off in the points this year, almost out of contention. But he's got nothing to lose here in Montreal, and this is where he got very close to Alonso last time. Not so close this time.
He was a little bit further away at the hairpin. I don't know if they've got a push-to-pass button effectively, or whether they need to dial up the extra revs on the steering wheel, or whether they've got like an easy fix when you think, okay, I've got a, here's my chance, now let's have the extra revs. You don't want to be suddenly realising you've got enough pace to overtake him, then have to start looking at the steering wheel to find a few more revs. Barrichello clearly out of the race for Honda.
Yeah, Rubens Barrichello, that is the reason for the early pit stop, and that's the first time this season that Rubens Barrichello has retired from a race. Only he and Alonso had done every single Grand Prix distance. So now Alonso, the only man so far. Will he make it to the end of lap 70? He's certainly soaking up a great deal of pressure from Kimi Raikkonen. And, well, a reminder for those of you following the World Cup that here on ITV, following this Grand Prix, you can see Portugal versus Holland, 8 o'clock here on ITV1. The winner of that game will play England in the quarterfinals of the World Cup. And what a fantastic tournament that is turning out to be. Oh, Montoya's out! Has he hit the wall? Look at the right rear corner, the right rear tyre.
Well, either it's damage from the incident, but I don't think so. I suspect he's whacked the champion's wall at the top of the hill. The heat haze rising about the same pace as Montoya wanting to get out of that car. Everything is so hot. All of the bodywork of the car follows the contours of the mechanicals so closely. There's no space at all in there, and suddenly the heat just wells up in the car. Did he hit the wall or not, or was that after the incident? I'd be surprised if it's after the incident with Nico Rosberg, because it was the other side of the car, but we'll have a look. Barrichello, I was looking at the wonderful statistics we get through for every race, James. It's 23, he's finished the last 23 Grand Prix, Barrichello, and
yep. Predictably enough, Montoya hits the wall of champions. Luckily for us, he doesn't stop there and bring out another safety car. He manages to continue down the main straight to a place where he can safely park it. But 3 visits then to Montreal in the last 3 years, and 3 non-finishes for one Pablo Montoya. He joins Rubens Barrichello, Montagny, Rosberg and Albers as retirements already, and this is only lap 15.
I'll tell you something significant. Montoya's trying to keep a job at McLaren and trying to find a job elsewhere if not, and struggling at the moment, floundering around a little bit. So mistakes like that are not helping his cause whatsoever.
Yes, it's interesting. Interesting to see a show of hands of all of you sitting at home watching Formula One who've enjoyed it with us for many years since Montoya came into this sport in 2001. A show of hands, how many would miss Juan Montoya if he wasn't an F1 driver next year? Because the way things look at the moment, it is a possibility, but he'll have to look elsewhere for employment.
Christian Klein, who's in 11, having a look at the back of Mark Webber's Williams. Klein had a solid weekend, actually, driven very nicely indeed. Alonso's lead back up to 0.6 of a second now, and he's beginning to put a little bit of pace into his laps. Truly's 13.6 seconds behind. Michael Schumacher still very much tucked up behind him.
Well, Webber pits then. 10th place Mark Webber, that's quite early considering he started well outside the top 10. He's trying something on the strategy possibly, or maybe he's got some problems. But, well, the pace of the 2 at the front is almost a second a lap, consistently faster than everybody else. There is Webber, having made that early-ish stop. 55 still to go here. Alonso and Raikkonen glued together on the racetrack at the front.
И, казалось бы, да, он не попал даже во второй сегмент. Ему могли залить сколько угодно топлива, но команда посчитала, что лучше, наверное, будет работать с большим количеством пит-стопов, на легкой машине прорываться наверх. Что ж, мы помним, что он был в районе 10-го места, так что посмотрим, оправдает себя эта тактика или нет. Посмотрим также, сколько топлива было в баках у других пилотов. Видим, что Михаэль Шумахер подотстал сейчас от Ярна Трулли. Видимо, и так здесь вот эта трава, листья сильно забивают воздухозаборники, и моторы иногда имеют тенденцию к перегреву, но если постоянно ехать вплотную на этих длинных прямых за конкурентом, то естественно, что воздухозаборники получают гораздо меньше струи чистого воздуха, и моторы перегреваются еще быстрее. Так что, может быть, с этой точки зрения Михаил Шумахер ослабил давление. Оба на Бриджстоуне, но у них, естественно, могут быть разные контакты. Джо Клиа и Рубенс Баррикелло обсуждают подробности его схода с дистанции. Мы говорили о Франке Монтане, да, в прошлые выходные он в составе команды Пескарола вместе с Себастьяном Лёбом, двукратным чемпионом мира по ралли, участвовал в Лимане и финишировал ни много ни мало на втором месте, вклинившись между двумя заводскими Ауди. Ну вот на этот раз Монтане достаточно быстро сошел с дистанции. К нему присоединился затем из-за каких-то механических проблем и Рубенс Баррикелло мы видели на Хонде. И эти самые механические проблемы Джо Клиа он и объяснял, видимо, на капитанском мостике Хонды. У Хонды вообще много пертурбаций с технической точки зрения. Вышло 2 недели назад после Сильверстоуна. Команда была не очень довольна действиями Джеффа Уиллиса. Сказала, что теперь на Гран-при он ездить не будет. А вместо него Жаки Киллер будет выполнять главные функции стратега, скажем так, и технического директора на месте событий. А Уиллис сосредоточится на том, чтобы улучшать машину на заводе. Но затем и там его заменили на Шуки Накамото, который раньше был руководителем департамента моторов Хонды. И, в общем, это подвесило Уиллиса в странном состоянии. Хотя здесь Ник Фрай объяснял, что он не наказан, что он не выгнан и что он будет продолжать работать. Но все идет к тому, что Уиллис вскоре присоединится к Гаскойну, которого другая японская команда Toyota чуть раньше уже выгнала по ходу этого сезона. Но, правда, вообще на его место никого не назначила. А, в общем, сейчас как бы функции технического руководства в Toyota и вовсе исполняет даже не моторист, а шинник Паскаль Васлон, который перешел из Мишлена, мы помним, туда. Это очень важный круг сейчас у тебя, Дженсен. Ты должен увеличить разрыв. Значит, соответственно, мы из этого делаем вывод, что вскоре Баттон поедет на пит-стоп. Ну, что касается разрывов спереди, то ему никто абсолютно не угрожает. Там 10 секунд практически до связки Михаил Шумахер, Джанкарло Физикелло. На 6-м месте, напомню, идет Баттон, а вот позади него в 3...
Intense pressure battle at the front of the Canadian Grand Prix. Last year's winner, Kimi Raikkonen, is second at the moment, breathing down the neck of race leader Fernando Alonso, who's attempting to win his 4th race in a row from pole position, which would be quite an achievement if he could pull it off. This is Renault's bogey circuit, though. They've already had a drive-through penalty for Giancarlo Fisichella, who started alongside Alonso on the front row of the grid, but he was adjudged to have jumped the start, and he clearly did. So that drive-through penalty has dropped him down into 5th place. Michael Schumacher is still tucked up behind Jarno Trulli, and we'll wait to see after the first round of pit stops how fast that Ferrari really is, because I have a feeling that the track is going to come towards that Ferrari a little bit as more rubber goes down this afternoon. Still a long way to go in this Grand Prix, 52 laps, and Schumacher can have a lot to say about the outcome. And also under threat is Jenson Button from Massa and Villeneuve. Felipe Massa has got past Jacques Villeneuve for 7th place, and that's going to be quite an interesting scrap as well in the points positions.
Well, Alonso turned the wick up to do his low 1:16, and Raikkonen's responded. So they've got something left in their pockets with engine revs and power, no doubt about it. Raikkonen now does a 1:16.3, gets the gap back to 1 second. Something I don't understand is Fisichella, he was sort of hanging on to the lead pack, did his drive-through penalty. Now he's come out, he's sort of hanging around about a second a lap off the lead pace, and behind Michael Schumacher. You think he'd have just steamed straight up to the back of Schumacher and Trulli, wouldn't you? But he didn't do that. In fact, he's now dropped into the 18s, Fisichella, so I would think the team will be a bit frustrated about that. They've signed him up for next year. I understand, or I believe that may well have happened as soon as Alonso declared he was leaving and heading off to McLaren, that they'd actually signed Fizzy a long time ago, but just chose to announce it this weekend. Who knows, but that's the story.
Still a subject of great speculation who'll be driving alongside him next year in the Renault team. Of course, Alonso moving across to McLaren in 2007. And, well, Flavio Briatore has been trying very, very hard to persuade Kimi Raikkonen to go and join him there. It would give Raikkonen a chance to be undisputed #1, really, in a team. If he goes to Ferrari, which is where most people believe he will go, he may end up having a season alongside Michael Schumacher, which I think those of us who are neutrals in the Formula One game would love to see that. Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher together at Ferrari. Now, we saw Rubens Barrichello retire from this race earlier. He's now live with Luis Goodman.
Ruben, some kind of engine problem?
Yeah, we have to wait and see, but it felt very tight, and I was losing a lot of places. And before I came in, I thought the wheels were going to lock, but I assume it was a problem with the engine, but I really went to wait to see.
But there's no point in just going around slowly under those circumstances.
No, because it was going to break anyway. It was just 1 second away. I mean, if we turn the car on now, we might find what the problem was.
You've had pretty good reliability this season so far, haven't you?
Yeah, very good actually, and I feel sorry for it because I think Honda did a tremendous job to make up for the problems, and we are finding more power and more reliability. So it's a one-off, a track that I like so much, and I'm off.
Thanks, Rubens.
Two extremely sensible things there Rubens was saying is if it's going to blow, you know it's going to blow when you're behind the wheel. There's no point in spilling oil all over the racetrack and smoke. Remember Sato created that huge accident in Monte Carlo when he just kept going until it blew itself to bits. And the other thing is, he's absolutely right. If I blow this to bits and all the bits and pieces laying on the racetrack, then the engineers can't fully establish what went wrong first. So you might as well bring it back in, and they've got a chance then to see what's just about to break instead of a pile of bits.
So Barrichello out of the race. Teammate Jenson Button is still in 6th place. Going to come under a little bit of pressure, possibly before too long, from Felipe Massa and Jacques Villeneuve. Button's pace, he's lapping in the low 1:18 at the moment, where the race leaders are lapping in the low 16s. So currently 2 seconds off the pace of the leaders, but he is down in 6th place, 12 seconds behind the car in front, which is Giancarlo Fisichella. So Honda's still got a lot of work to do on getting the race pace of this car sorted out.
I suspect Ralph's on a very long first stint. I'd be inclined to pull Coulthard in, I think, if I was running that programme. And they're 22 laps into the race. They might as well pull him in now, because behind him is Webber, who's catching. And also then Liuzzi in the Toro Rosso is, mind you, Ralph's slow off that corner. Can DC do anything about it? Ralph's got the line down into turn 1, so Coulthard will have to go the long way round. And Ralph's not really fighting that too hard, although DC's gone too deep now. So he's back in front, but there's the saying, Liuzzi's a further half minute behind them, so they'll only lose the 1 place. And I think the pace of the Toyota is really holding David Coulthard up. Raikkonen, a new fastest lap of the race on a 1:15.8. We've got an absolute duel going on at the front. It's tremendous, and they're now 23 seconds ahead of 3rd place man Jarno Trulli.
Here's Michael Schumacher, started 5th on the grid, dropped down to 7th in the opening corners when he was passed by Rosberg and Montoya, but then conveniently for him, they took each other out on the 2nd lap, and so he went back into 5th place. But the bad news for him is that he's been tucked up behind Jarno Trulli ever since then, and he cannot get past him. And now he's got Giancarlo Fisichella breathing all the way down his back of his neck. So a tremendous battle at the front between Alonso and Raikkonen for the lead, and an even closer battle really between these 3 drivers, Trulli, Schumacher and Fisichella, for the final place on the podium. Fisichella, of course, recovering from that drive-through penalty. A lot of anger going on, I would imagine, in that cockpit. Probably kicking himself a little bit because it was his own mistake.
If he can get close at the hairpin, he should have some almighty toe down the 1 kilometre back straight, because he'll have like a double effect. And Alonso then, the first man in the pits. Now we're going to see some fireworks from Kimi Raikkonen, who continues en route and takes the lead of the Grand Prix.
Yeah, McLaren in the lead here in Montreal. Last year's winner, Kimi Raikkonen. And here's the race leader, previous race leader.
Still very calm into his pit box though, James, not flustered at all. And it's really the most critical aspect of the pit stop timing, is getting the car stopped exactly on the mark, so that all the wheelmen on the guns and the fuel guys don't have to adjust their position. And it's just not worth taking that final half second and steaming into the box. But it's easy to say, but when you know you're in a straight fight with another very fast car and driver combination like Kimi Raikkonen, it's very easy to attack the pit box. But now Raikkonen needs some good sector times, because Alonso will be heavy with fuel.
He will. This is where Raikkonen can make the difference and get in front of Alonso by the time he makes his own 2nd stop. Ron Dennis there, the boss of McLaren, who joined us from the pit wall at the British Grand Prix with some very interesting insights. He's masterminding the tactics for Raikkonen. He's would very much like to win a race so far this season. McLaren yet to get on the top step of the podium. Well, you saw Alonso stationary there for just over 8 seconds. That's just over 56 kilos of fuel that went into his car. good enough for 25 laps of this race. So he will stop once again towards around about that 48 or 49. And you need just under 160 kilos of fuel to complete the race distance here in Montreal. The engine does a lot of work. It's at full throttle for a long time. And here comes Schumacher, who's got a good draft on Trulli. And finally, Schumacher goes through.
What was Trulli doing? Gave up about 100 metres before the corner. Okay, Schumacher's clear then. Now he can get on with it, but he's 29 seconds behind anyway, which is effectively a pit stop. So he'll have to pull something out of the bag now. And there's Michael. Jarno goes up the inside, which is the only thing he can do. And Michael says, fine, I'll take the racing line then. And truly, it's very dirty up the inside there, but I have to say, that was a bit of a yield.
Well, they were lapping in the low 1 minute 18s before that happened. Let's have keep an eye on the pace of Schumacher now that he's free. Ralf Schumacher there, his brother, seems to be going quite slowly. Obviously a problem there for the Toyota, currently running in 12th place as race leader Raikkonen dives past him and into the pit lane. Now, what has he been able to do? Has he been able to do enough to leapfrog Alonso?
Alonso's outlaps are pretty solid. He's a few tenths down in each, 2 or 3 tenths down in each sector, and he had about a 0.9 of a second advantage when the stops commenced. So this will be extremely tight. In fact, Alonso's going to take it, isn't it? Because something's. Oh no! The wheel is spinning up. Was that put on properly? Was that wheel on properly as he passes the other stricken McLaren of Montoya? That didn't look good, did it? No. Has he got a problem?
I'm not sure, but Trulli and Fisichella have pitted, so Michael Schumacher is up into second place. Ralf Schumacher's touring slowly, and here comes Alonso, an enormous speed differential there through the blind sequence of corners. The last thing you want to do coming around a blind bend is find a slow-moving Formula One car. Trulli pits, another long stop then for him. He drops down the order. He's gone down to about 9th place now. Alonso leading. Raikkonen is back out again. Michael Schumacher has yet to make a stop. Jenson Button has yet to make a stop. He is up into 4th place. And, well, that was pretty hairy for Alonso, wasn't it, coming across Ralf Schumacher. That is the top 8 then, after Raikkonen's first stop, with Schumacher yet to make his. Let's watch his pace, though. Michael Schumacher's now 16.7 that last lap, so that's the same sort of pace as the leaders can do.
Yeah, he's got that big deficit, unless he's one stopping, which would surprise me. Well, the right rear wheel is still on, and Ralf then is off the racetrack, what surprised me is he was cruising down the back straight. That's down at the hairpin. He was cruising down the back straight, but didn't pit and continued just to cruise around the racetrack. Louise has found Nico Rosberg.
Nico, was that an avoidable accident?
Yeah, it was, of course. I knew he was there, and I didn't want to lose the place. You know, I want to keep pushing, and my car was good on the brakes, so I decided to just brake late and stay on the outside and let him do whatever he wants on the inside, and then I'll be through in the next one again. But yeah, I never actually saw him, so all I felt was a touch on the rear, and that was it. Then actually two times, and that was it, and then that was it.
You've had a pretty controversial weekend one way and another, haven't you?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. But what really annoys me is it would have been great for the team, you know, to get some points today, and unfortunately didn't work out because we had quite a good car, I think, today. Also in the first lap in the race, it felt very good, and I really hope that Mark can do well.
Thanks, Nico.
Well, welcome to the club, son. Controversy is Formula One's middle name. Ralf Schumacher finally makes it back to the pits. We saw while Rosberg was talking there, Massa get in front of Jenson Button. That was a pass for position and for 4th place, in fact, which is where Massa finished here last year, driving a Sauber, a heroic drive by him at the Gilles Villeneuve circuit last year. And he seems to be putting something together here as well this year. They're a long way behind the leading 3, though, almost 20 seconds behind his teammate Michael Schumacher, currently running in 3rd place. Here's Raikkonen. How much did that stop cost him? That delayed stop, the right rear wheel seemed to have a problem getting it on. And, well, our own Louise Goodman took part in a pit stop at the British Grand Prix, and she felt the pressure of that, and it really is very easy to make a small mistake. And you can see that Raikkonen had set himself up very nicely to have a crack at Alonso, but he lost 3.5, maybe 4 seconds with that delay as Button pits. Right, clockwork Out he goes. Just not enough pace in this car once again on race day for Jenson Button to figure really in the battle for the podiums. He goes back out on the racetrack, and he is now shown as being 11th. Well, Juan Montoya was the other half of that controversial accident with Nico Rosberg. He's talking now with Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, and Juan Pablo, you're really cross with Rosberg.
Yeah, you know, one thing, you know, is racing, one thing is racing hard. I don't mind. You know, if you want to touch wheels, I don't mind. But, you know, he missed the chicane when I should have had him, and he even like that, you know, kept racing hard, and it's okay. But, you know, I was in the inside of the corner, I was beside him, and he just turned straight at me. And that corner, two cars don't fit, and I was on the inside, and I thought I should have been ahead of him, and he tried to maintain the position, and we collided.
What about the incident with Michael the lap before?
No, it's, you know, first lap incident. We're racing hard. Same thing, I was on the inside, and Michael knew he didn't fit through there, so he went through the grass, and it was the smart thing to do for him.
Thanks, man.
Exactly as you were saying, Martin. It was fantastic, though, to see them that close together, wasn't it?
Yeah, good close racing, and it's interesting that Nico said I didn't see him there. I didn't realise he was there, which explains, I think, why he just carried on and turned in. Yeah, I'm afraid. I still think less so having seen it a few more times, but I still think, unfortunately, Nico will have to take the blame for that one as Michael Schumacher laps. Ralf Schumacher has clearly got a problem. He's some 10 seconds per lap off the pace. And you wonder how much longer he'll persevere with that.
Well, we saw a pretty hairy moment a few laps ago where Alonso came through and almost collected Ralf Schumacher through the blind corners. It's one of the things about Montreal. There are a sequence of blind bends around the back of this circuit in the walls. Oh, Schumacher touching the wall there. He's pushing very, very hard, and that was not enough to put him out, but certainly enough to give him something to think about.
Well, the track is the same front and rear, so they must have both been grazing the wall there, but it was pretty square on. Michael might just get away with that, but he's now lapping faster than anybody else on the racetrack, desperately trying to regain some of those positions.
He's going a long way into this race, isn't he? This is lap 30, and he's yet to make his first stop this afternoon, so he was carrying a lot of fuel yesterday in qualifying. We thought perhaps it might be 5 laps more than Alonso, but he's already gone 6 laps further in this race than the world champion. And currently he's almost 10 seconds behind him, but he still has obviously a stop to make. But if he can one stop here this afternoon, then he can play himself into contention, I think.
Yeah, if Michael is one stopping, that's an unusual strategy, but he's brought himself right into play. Maybe not so much with Alonso, but he's actually quicker than Raikkonen at this stage of the Grand Prix. It will be a very long stop, you're right, and he'll have a pretty fat car when he comes back out. But looking, if he's had that kind of pace through the early stages, James, with that level of fuel on, then Michael Schumacher, as we half suspected on the grid, had a faster car than his grid slot maybe suggested.
Ralf Schumacher comes into the pits for the 3rd time then with that stricken Toyota. Not quite sure what the problem is, but it's certainly driving everyone crazy out there.
And
it's a second race. Drive-through penalty it is, in fact.
Yeah.
Drive-through penalty for speeding in the pit lane for Ralf Schumacher. Just been flashed up on the computer screen here in the commentary box, so that's the reason why Ralf goes through again. So frustrating really for Michael Schumacher. Second race in succession, Martin. He's been held up. If you remember at Silverstone, it was Raikkonen who was slower than him in the early stage of the Grand Prix. He couldn't really have a crack at Alonso. And here today, he's been held up by Jarno Trulli, has lost a lot of time, and it's really cost him the chance of having a run at Alonso. Let's get some more news.
Yeah, down at Toyota, James, and the team are as perplexed as Ralf. Ralf swears blind that it's the rear tyres that have just gone completely, and he can't maintain control of the car. That's why they brought him in and changed the tyres, but now he says that the rear still feels funny, and he must have sped in the pit lane, that's why he's got the drive-through penalty. But, well, I mean, they're all at sea, and he's well done, so be amazed if he actually finishes this one.
Thanks for that, Ted. 39 laps to go then as the race leader crosses the line, and we ride on board with the singer-songwriter everyone's talking about at the moment, Jacques Villeneuve, who's just releasing his first single called Would You Accept? We heard a little bit of it at the beginning of the show. And, well, tomorrow at his restaurant here in Montreal, he's releasing 5,000 copies of that.
Target 17.0, you're doing good.
Yep. Merci beaucoup, says Jacques Villeneuve to his race engineer.
I thought he was going to sing for us for a moment, but Jacques turned from being a nightmare driver for the for the media. He's turned into one of the best guys out there. He's such a pleasure to work with, and he's so eloquent in the things that he tells us. And Jacques, I think, very much in a happy stage of his life and driving extremely well this year.
Yes, of course, he got married just recently to his girlfriend Johanna, and he's in a good place, as you say. He's made this album that he recorded last November, when he wasn't quite sure whether he was going to keep his drive in Formula One with the BMW Sauber team. He went into a recording studio with a load of mates, laid down some tracks, and well, the results will be out shortly. As I say, the first single released tomorrow. And it's quite funny, Michael Schumacher now, who's about to make a pit stop, was asked about it yesterday, and he said, yes, he's good at singing, perhaps he should stick to that, because he's better at it than he is at driving a Formula One car. And you can see the niggle that stretches back to the late 1990s between these two still goes on.
I wonder why they fueled that. If they are stopping twice, why they fueled it so long? Because it compromised him on the grid, didn't it? And it's wrecked his afternoon, really. He lost best part of the thick end of half a minute behind Jarno Trulli.
Yeah.
That's not a particularly long fuel, so he will be in again. And it looks like he'll get down there back in front of Trulli again, so that's quite critical for him. But that's a strange tactic and strategy.
Yeah, well, they were struggling with the harder tyre. Obviously, they felt that they could marry a strategy which meant that the harder tyre would have a bit of chance to do its work. Anyway, critically for Michael Schumacher, he has rejoined in front of Jarno Trulli, and that is important. So Alonso leading this race from Raikkonen, and we've got 38 to go, approaching the halfway stage in Montreal.
Провели в Скудерии, так или иначе, но Михаэль Шумахер уверенно шел на третьем месте, шел достаточно долго по трассе, не останавливаясь в боксах, и после этого пит-стопа, вот мы видим, все равно остался впереди, по крайней мере, своего партнера по команде Филиппе Массы, хотя между ними, конечно, было 20 с лишним секунд, но потеря времени здесь невелика при заезде на питлейн, и при выезде с него также. Здесь конфигурация трассы позволяет, в общем, достаточно безболезненно проводить пит-стопы. Соответственно, Михаэль Шумахер своей третьей позиции в гонке не потерял. Ну, естественно, ни о каком плотном преследовании сейчас до этого бывшего непосредственно перед ним Кими Рэйкконен уже речи не идет. Филиппе не возвращается кругом спустя Михаэля. Посмотрите, можно было бы предположить, что вот он поравнялся с Ральфом Шумахером, а вот Жак Вильнёв заезжает в боксы. Видимо, речь шла все-таки о его времени на круге. И Жак Вильнёв сейчас заезжает в боксы. Резина, ну, в достаточно приличном состоянии, нужно заметить, если учесть, что она все-таки прошла 33 круга после старта этой гонки. Свежий комплект, но Жак Вильнёв, как и Михаэль Шумахер, явно на тактике двух пит-стопов. Просто вот первый был столь сильно оттянутым. Учитывая, что Жак Вильнёв квалифицировался 11-м, мы говорили, 18 тысячных ему не хватило для попадания в третий сегмент. Соответственно, ему по правилам могли долить сколько угодно топлива. И вот в BMW решили устроить такой длинный первый отрезок, чтобы пересидеть большое количество машин на трассе. Еще раз, Михаэль Шумахер на этот раз решил не связываться со стеной чемпионов. Мы видим, поняв, что тормозит чуть-чуть поздновато, он благоразумно, как и на первом круге Нико Росберг, срезал вот здесь чуть-чуть эту последнюю шикану. На его счастье, позади него не было Хуана Пабло Монтойи, который бы потом, как и с Нико Росбергом, тогда попробовал поконтратаковать в течение нескольких поворотов. За единичное вот такой срез шиканы я не думаю, что будет наказание. Другое дело, если 2-3 раза подряд это будет повторяться, тогда комиссары могут и принять, в общем, решение о том, что Михаэль и трассу чуть-чуть срезает, и тормоза бережет, и, в общем, принять решение о проезде по питлейну. Но такой, еще раз повторимся, после первого вот единичного случая, что здесь, что в Монако, также очень многие просто срезают иногда вынужденно, скажем так, шикану после туннеля. Чаще всего такого не происходит. Разрыв между Алонсо и Рэйкконеном тем временем стабилизирован. Все те же 6 секунд и 6 десятых. И этот разрыв практически не меняется. Вот столько времени стоил этот чуть более поздний пит-стоп Кими Рэйкконен. Несмотря на то, что перед ним он показал лучший круг этой гонки, вы помните, быстрее, чем Фернандо Алонсо. И, может быть, мог бы на этот раз, вы помните, как Михаэль Шумахер тогда сделал? Он не досидел относительно, говорят, пересидел, да, чаще всего это приносит. А вот 2 недели назад не досидел вроде бы, да, один круг относительно Кими Рэйкконена, а отобрал у него второе место.
We're at the halfway stage of the Canadian Grand Prix in Montreal. What is a really rich period of top quality sport here on ITV1. After this, you can watch Portugal versus Holland in the World Cup, last 16 game at 8 o'clock. The winner of that game, of course, will play England, who won today 1-0, the David Beckham free kick against Ecuador. So that's the quarter-final game against England, the winner of Portugal-Holland. later on, straight after this race here on ITV1. We're riding on board with the race leader, Fernando Alonso. He's just over 7 seconds ahead of his arch enemy and rival, Kimi Raikkonen, who lost time due to a problem in the McLaren team with the pit stop. There was a delay on getting his right rear corner tyre on, and that's lost him probably 4 or 5 seconds, and that's dropped him right back. Alonso is able to manage this margin now. Up to that point, it was a really high-pressure encounter between these two, with Raikkonen really breathing down Alonso's neck for a lot of it. Michael Schumacher has managed to clear the cars that were holding him up in the first stint. He is now the fastest man on the racetrack in the Ferrari, in the mid to high 1:16s, trying desperately to do something about the 28-second gap that he has to Fernando Alonso, and that gap was really made by getting stuck behind Jarno Trulli for the opening stint of the race. But for that, I think Schumacher would have been right there this afternoon with Alonso on pace. Ted Kravitz, what do you got for us?
The weekend doesn't get any better for Honda, James. Jenson Button dropped down to 9th, was jumped by both BMWs with Villeneuve and Heidfeld. And as I say that, actually Ferrari come out for Felipe Massa. So that's a symmetrical one stop for Felipe Massa, which means that his qualifying wasn't half bad, was it?
It was pretty tidy. 10th on the grid then for Felipe Massa. Parlays that into a pit stop on lap 37 of this race. He's gone further than anybody else in the opening stint.
Yeah, solid drive from him. Button struggling on pace, back in the 119s now. And as you say, Ted, falling down the field. But I tell you what, Kimi Raikkonen cannot relax at all. He's actually quite slow in this phase of the Grand Prix. He's in P2. Michael's 19 seconds behind him, but the kind of pace Schumacher's putting on, he'll be easily up to Raikkonen before the end of the Grand Prix. So Raikkonen really struggling. They all come out of the pit lane, don't they, and understeer horribly at that final little right-hander there to get back onto the track. They look like they're going to suspended animation there. Massa underway then. He's on a one-stopper, so he should have a pocket full of points if he's lucky enough to finish the race.
I was standing down there just behind the fence on the outside of turn 2 there, watching yesterday morning in free practice, and there's quite a build-up of those bits of dust and little bits of rubber that come off the tyres, what they call marbles. I think that's part of the problem, is that the drivers come out of the pit lane into those marbles. And you remember last year, Montoya, after his first stop, he understeered straight off the road, went up onto the grass and almost hit the wall coming out of his pit stop.
So, something that was going through my mind, we only caught the end of the Raikkonen thing, was whether or not they actually ever got the old tyre off in that pit stop. And we're getting news from the pit lane, from the F1 ITV pit crew, that he didn't. So Raikkonen is now out there on a right rear that's gone somewhat further than anticipated, which may explain his occasional loss of pace. But it did look like, didn't it? They never really quite got to put the fresh one on, so they sent him anyway.
Yes, the guy who was holding a tyre and shaking his head as though he hadn't had the opportunity to do the job that he's been drilled in hundreds of times over the weekend and thousands of times over the course of the season. There he is, all standing by, ready to jam a new tyre on, and that opportunity never came his way. That certainly would appear to be the case, and that is why Raikkonen is in the situation he's in. He's done miraculously well, and if you consider that he's carrying a mismatched set of tyres under the circumstances, to be just 8 seconds behind. You take 4 of that, maybe 5 of that to be the time he lost in the pit stop, then he's doing an amazing job and closing down now on Fernando Alonso. He's got the gap down to under 8 seconds. His last lap a 1:16.6, a full second faster than Alonso on lap 38. And well, when he won this race here last year, Martin, if you remember, he was carrying a steering imbalance. The whole car wanted to turn left all the time, and Schumacher was catching him in the closing stages of the race, and it was amazing that Raikkonen was able to finish the race at all. So another heroic performance here from Kimi Raikkonen.
Got fresh information from down there in the pit lane is actually they did change the right rear. They were trying to do something else in that area of the car. So not absolutely clear what was going on, but it certainly compromised that phase of the race. But as you say, James, suddenly he has now found some pace.
Apologies for the confusion then, if the information coming up from the pits seems a bit mixed. Anyway, well, either way, whatever kind of right rear tyre Raikkonen is carrying, he's the quickest man out there at the moment. Michael Schumacher's had a slow lap in traffic, and he has now dropped back to just over 30 seconds behind the race leader. Alonso then bidding to overcome Renault's jinx at this circuit. On both of the last 2 races here, in 2004 and 2005, they've been front runners, but on both occasions, both cars have retired. Here this afternoon, His teammate Fisichella is running in a solid but unspectacular 4th place, 11 seconds behind Schumacher, but comfortably in front of the Toyota of Jarno Trulli, whose pace has not really improved on a new set of tyres in the middle part of the race. He's still lapping in the low 118s, as he was in the early phase of the race when he was keeping Michael Schumacher behind him. He's 5th then, Massa is 6th, Villeneuve is running in 7th place, and Heidfeld, his teammate, in 8th. So 2 BMWs in the points at the moment, as Schumacher has another moment down at the chicane. That's the 3rd incident he's had here this afternoon.
That's the 3rd one we've seen. So quite how many he's actually had while we've been watching other cars. So Michael Schumacher getting very late onto the brakes down in the final turn, and recognises if there's no penalty, then why not? You might as well just steam through there. But ultimately, I don't think that actually finds you any lap time. For example, that was a 1:17.0. He has been doing 16.7s because he's too slow down the pit straight itself. Alonso then with an 8-second lead at the moment over Kimi Räikkönen. He's just responding to whatever Räikkönen puts in.
Well, he had to respond pretty quickly to the steering there as well. A great deal of handwork going on the steering wheel. Let's ride with him then and enjoy this blast around the back of the Canadian circuit. 19,000 RPM.
Räikkönen is stopping on lap 56, lap 56. We want to use our revs up before then. It's important now.
Use our revs up. He'll be allocated a certain number of revs or laps at higher revs, and he wants to maintain the cushion. So they're obviously still concerned about Räikkönen's ultimate potential to do damage to their Grand Prix victory here. So that's interesting, isn't it? They're not ready to... It looks to me it's rather more comfortable than that for Renault.
Yeah, that was Rod Nelson, the race engineer of Fernando Alonso. We've heard him a few times coming over the radio this season. It sounded like he had the cigars out, but he sounded a bit more under pressure there, didn't he? And look at this. This is what I saw before. Watch the steering wheel. Big correction there for Alonso. Under braking for turn 1. Pulling it down from about 180 miles an hour to just under 100 miles an hour for the first part of that corner. So, well, I hope there's nothing going wrong with the braking on Alonso's car. As I said before, it's a big ask for the brakes, this racetrack, with a lot of very, very big stops. Give you an idea of the kind of energy involved in it. You're talking about something like 85 kilograms of pressure that the drivers have to apply onto the brake pedal for a corner like this hairpin here. Now, a lot of these drivers don't even weigh 85 kilos, so that is a phenomenal amount of pressure to put onto the pedal, and that's just to get the car to stop. It takes about 150 meters to get a car to go from 205 miles an hour here just to 75 for this final chicane, and 4G of frontal force on the driver, so 4 times his own body weight, pushing him against the seat belts, pushing his hands against the steering wheel and his feet against the dead pedal, throwing all his innards forward as he hits the brakes for that corner.
They do have the leverage of the brake pedal, of course, but something that Pat Simmons said to me on the grid was very interesting. He said it's different this year with this new qualifying system. If you get through to the top 10, we've gone off and done another 15 laps or something to get the fuel credits, putting the brakes under ever more pressure than we're used to here. They can't, they then go straight into parc fermé, so they're not able to change those brakes. So something the team's a little bit nervous about. Ted has some further news.
Yeah, we didn't see it on the cameras, Martin, but Fisichella made a major mistake 2 laps ago. He did an 18.7, and now he's just managed to get back into the zone that he was in, which is a 17.4. But he needs to be getting that job done, needs to be going into the low 17s, because he's up against Felipe Massa on that one stop. Massa may well jump him at Fisichella's second stop.
Passionate Canadian fans getting behind their man, Jacques Villeneuve, standing up, cheering him on, waving their hands. They love him here, through thick or thin, it doesn't matter. He's come up here as a world champion, he's come here as a big loser in various years, and it doesn't seem to matter to them at all. They turn out a capacity crowd every single year. It really is a credit to the city of Montreal and the state of Quebec. Alonso then on lap 43, leading by 8 seconds from Räikkönen, but clearly not feeling comfortable with 28 laps to go.
в свое время Мерседес готовил Хайтфельда, но после того, как они предпочли Райконена, карьера Ника была на волоске. И в итоге, вот благодаря его блестящим выступлениям, в том числе и в Заубере, в Джордане, в прошлом году в Уильямсе, BMW убедилась, что, может быть, это тот самый гонщик и немецкий, и трудолюбивый, который им нужен. И с Хайтфельдом подписан многолетний контракт, он лидер команды. Но Жак Вильнёв держится, несмотря на свои годы, несмотря на оказавшуюся многим потерю мотивации, в одном абсолютно темпе с Хайтфельдом по ходу этого сезона. И поэтому, скорее всего, контракт с ним продлят. Хотя сам Жак, конечно, хотел бы, чтобы здесь это. И канадские журналисты часто об этом спрашивали. Вот здесь мы видим Алонсо так же, как и Михаэль Шумахер, срезает эту шикану на торможении, чтобы, не дай бог, не приложиться об стену. Видели новые небольшие аэродинамические элементы на носовой части обтекателя у Рено. Аэродинамические элементы, которые не специфичны для Канады. Команда сказала, что это просто развитие в аэродинамической трубе, и они будут использоваться по ходу всего года. Что касается окраски вот этой новой машины, то она специфична именно для Канады. Тигр, благодаря своему броску, помог команде выиграть 2 недели назад на Сильверстоуне. Что касается вот этой окраски, то малайские дизайнеры поучаствовали, и символизирует оно такой интересный предмет из малайской мифологии, который называется керес. И это одновременно и оружие, и амулет, соответственно, атакующий и магически защитный, потому что он защищает обладателя и уничтожает врагов. Вот такие официальные подробности от Рено. Что касается защиты обладателей, ну, в случае с Физикеллой, может быть, не очень удалось. Он пока идет 4-м, проигрывает Михаэлю Шумахеру 16 секунд и 14 выигрывает у Ярна Трулли. Что касается уничтожения врагов, ну, как сказать, вот смотрим, Михаэль Шумахер также ошибался здесь на торможении перед шпилькой Казино. Может быть, уже не раз мы видели, он и блокировал тормоза, и срезал шикану после этого на главном торможении этой трассы. Может быть, тормоза у Феррари начали чуть-чуть уставать. По крайней мере, от Кими Рэйкконена он отстает на 28 секунд, у Физика выигрывает 16. Физикелла, который темп чуть-чуть сбросил, он идет 1.19 сейчас, даже медленнее Трулли, который позади него 1.18. Что касается Алонсо и Рэйкконена, 1.17 держится оба лидера. У Михаэля вот после этой ошибки последний круг была 1.21. Но, естественно, сейчас, когда Феррари вернется к боевому темпу, то дела должны обстоять чуть лучше. Разрыв между двумя лидерами вновь стабилизировался, но на отметке 8 секунд и 2. И для второй волны пит-стопов, скажем прямо, подопечным Рона Денниса вряд ли это сулит какую-то возможность контратаковать Фернандо Алонсо и опередить его. Здесь...
Back in Montreal, 25 laps to go here in the Canadian Grand Prix. This Ile de Notre Dame circuit, 2.7 miles long, most of the year is a parkland. People are here walking their dogs, pushing buggies along with babies, riding their mountain bikes.
Radio check this lap. Do you need a balance change? No balance change.
Don't go twiddling them with my front wings when I come into the pits is basically the story there. Does he want a balance change in terms of the front wing downforce, I'd imagine, rather than the tyre pressures as such? And truly they're saying, no, I'm happy with the car, don't do anything to it, just give me some fresh tyres and a refuel and I'll be on my way again. We're seeing a lot of inconsistency out there now. Michael Schumacher has run extremely wide down at the hairpin. There is just a mass of discarded rubber from these extremely soft tyres they're using in 2006. And as soon as the drivers are running slightly offline, they're just getting onto what looks like and feels like ball bearings, and off they go. And Raikkonen getting exactly that, and so close to T-boning one of the Toro Rossos. The drivers are beginning to struggle. A fraction offline, and they're just on the marbles.
Yes, we've seen Alonso make several corrections. He's missed the apex of the final chicane and just basically straight-lined it a couple of times. So has Michael Schumacher. There you saw Raikkonen having problems as well. It's going to be pretty treacherous, you know, in the final 24 laps of this race. And they've also got to worry about the brakes. They can change the brake balance from the front to the rear to try and help that situation along as well. Although we have very high temperatures here on the brake discs, as you can see, that's what Martin's talking about, these little marbles, almost like gravel on the outside of that hairpin. And once you get onto that, it's like sitting on ball bearings. The car just goes straight on, as we saw with Raikkonen a moment ago and Michael Schumacher before that. So difficult times for these Grand Prix drivers. Alonso is leading. Raikkonen, after that problem at turn 1, has lost 3 seconds to him, so he's now 12 seconds behind the world champion. Michael Schumacher half a minute behind in 3rd place. Fisichella, after a drive-through penalty for jumping the start, is in 4th. Trulli is 5th. Massa is 6th, and a danger man for quite a lot of the guys in front of him, I think, because he's having a very strong afternoon. Jacques Villeneuve doing a super job. Here he is in 7th place for BMW Sauber, and Nick Heidfeld in 8th place. Whoa, who was that sailing past? Oh, it's the race leader.
Clearly wasn't full position. Jack yielding very easily there, but he's looking for a few points again. They came off a great result in Silverstone, both cars in the points. But Alonso absolutely flying past him there, wasn't it? Astonishing. Lap 48 we're on. Raikkonen's now 12.2 seconds behind Alonso after that error. Michael Schumacher further, best part of half a minute down the road now. And Fisichella's come alive. He's just done his fastest lap of the race. So clearly, James, online, there's good grip, but a half a metre offline and you're heading towards the boonies.
Yeah, so that's Fisichella's fastest lap of the race on a 16.7, which is almost a second slower than the overall fastest lap of the race, Kimi Raikkonen, in the 15.8. So the early part of this Grand Prix, there was probably more speed available to the cars. It's become more treacherous and more difficult as the race has gone on, and that's bad news for Michael Schumacher, who was hoping that the track would come to him in the Ferrari. This is Jacques Villeneuve now, crawling all over the back of Felipe Massa in the 2nd Ferrari. Let's enjoy this with Jacques.
You can see Alonso's just scarped it at the front. He's gone. That's the race leading pace. But this is all about 6th and 7th. And Massa's looking good if he is one stopping. He could surprise a lot of people at the end of this Grand Prix. Villeneuve just ahead of Heidfeld then. Button remains P9 and out of the points. And not that far behind Button is clean in 10th. And Coulthard, who's also one stopping, cruising nicely up to the back of the point scoring position. So quietly doing a solid job this afternoon is Coulthard.
He certainly is. He's closing in on Jenson Button, his fellow countryman, who's currently in 9th place. Honda don't seem to have the pace here this weekend, and that'll be a concern for Shuei Nakamoto, who's taken over as the top technical man in the Honda team. He's a former motorcycle guy. He's been affiliated to the Formula 1 team for a while, but Jeffrey Willis, the technical director, has been basically had a man put above him, and at the moment we're not sure whether we're going to see Jeff Willis again ever in a Honda shirt. He's reflecting on his future. I don't know if he's even watching this Grand Prix back home with us on ITV with his wife Francesca, but if you are, Jeff, keep your chin up, mate.
Alonso still pounding the 16.8s in now. Ralph's got to let him go. That's the only sensible thing to do. Ralph's not in this Grand Prix. He's 15th and struggling. So quite quickly, and no doubt with the help of a radio call, getting out of the way of Jarno Trulli's teammate, recovering to the track. As I said, the pit lane feeds you unusually into the exit of turn 2 here. Nowhere else in the world do we get that kind of strange layout.
So Heidfeld behind teammate Jacques Villeneuve once again. It's been such a strong season for Villeneuve. Heidfeld, who was did a fantastic job last year, and Villeneuve this year has really been putting him in the shade recently. And Heidfeld behind him on the racetrack, but definitely advantage Villeneuve at the moment as Renault get ready to welcome one of their cars. First time round it was Alonso who was the first to pit of the 2 Renaults, and here it is he again, the race leader, for his 2nd and final stop here this afternoon. He needs another nice calm one here. Let's see how the Renault boys go to work.
Some drama going on out on the track. Clearly the yellows are out, although that sign has now gone away at the top of your screen from showing yellow. It's Ralf Schumacher apparently was off the road again, and can Fernando get down there before that traffic? Yes, he certainly can, so that worked out quite nicely for him. A good, clean, calm stop again for the Renault boys.
He's got a huge margin over Michael Schumacher, half a minute, so he's comfortable there. Schumacher's pace at this stage of the Grand Prix a little bit erratic. That last lap a mid 117. He's not, in fact, he's just gone through again in a low 118, so pace dropping off a little bit for Schumacher.
Okay, what's going here? It's Ralf Schumacher. He's already complained he's got no rear grip at the back of that Toyota, and he wasn't really on the marbles, it just spun on him. Strange.
Down in 15th place, Ralf Schumacher. There is the sole remaining McLaren here this afternoon. Oh, slow, and look how difficult it is. That's more like Speedway than Formula One. Back end out. Poor old Raikkonen. I bet he feels he's back on a Finnish fjord, trying to get some grip from his rear tyres on the ice.
Well, there'll not be too much overtaking going on down there. It's very much, there's barely a car width now, is there, of space. And Raikkonen, see, the trouble is you pick up that rubber and the next few corners you're going to be struggling. So that's Raikkonen ahead of Alonso, who stopped twice. So they're a stop apart now and just 1.8 seconds in it. Raikkonen under a lot of pressure. Alonso must be feeling extremely comfortable at this stage. Here we go again. Heavy brake. They brake from about 80 metres, 180 miles an hour, 80 metres before the corner. And he's just gone a little bit wide onto what, as you say, feels like gravel.
So that's worked out very nicely for Fernando Alonso, who was certainly feeling the pressure earlier on in this race from Kimi Raikkonen, but a combination of a slow pit stop for Raikkonen, some question about the state of the right rear tyre of that McLaren, and one or two excursions has meant that Raikkonen has lost enough time that he's that far in front of Alonso, but he's got one more stop to make than the Renault drivers. So looking pretty good for Fernando Alonso. Now, I mentioned that brakes were a big issue here in Montreal. Ted Kravitz can tell us about it.
Yeah, and that's undoubtedly what's happening. Also, as well as the marbles and the no grip offline, Martin and James, what's happening is that the brakes are now starting to near the end of their natural lives. When Fernando Alonso came in for his stop, the front wheels were absolutely black, caked in carbon brake dust. So they put a nice new set on, but all of these guys are going to have to nurse their brakes through the final stint.
There's Fisichella having problems as well. It's becoming a bit of an endurance trial, this one. Well, Martin was making the point earlier on that last year with single lap qualifying, the cars would only do a handful of laps on a Saturday afternoon before going into Parc Ferme. An out lap, a fast lap and an in lap. This year they had to do, for example, 23 laps, Alonso did yesterday afternoon, on top of a race distance of 70. So these brake discs are having to do 103 laps of this Montreal circuit. That's a big ask.
Fisichella pits. He was beginning to catch Michael Schumacher, just 11 seconds behind him. So Schumacher third, Fisichella fourth. He's in for his, they're showing 3 stops. Of course, he had a drive-through for jumping the start early on in the Grand Prix. And now he's in for his second formal pre-arranged pit stop.
He can only speculate on where he might have finished this afternoon without the drive-through. He qualified on the front row of the grid alongside his teammate Alonso for only the second time this season. As Flavio Briatore has said on many occasions, it's great when he does this, but we need him to do it on every single Grand Prix weekend. And since his drive-through, Fisichella unfortunately has dropped off a little bit. Here is Kimi Raikkonen, who was your race leader briefly after the second stop of Alonso. He comes in now to the McLaren box. Let's hope they get that right rear tyre off properly.
It's got 27 seconds over Michael Schumacher.
Oh, the engine stopped. Martin, the engine stopped. Oh, no. McLaren again. A problem. What is it, Ted?
It must be the clutch because they finished fueling. The guy's just giving him a shove to make sure he gets out. But that's either clutch or electronic because he was just about to give the engine some revs, as they do, as they know when the fueling is finished, they put the throttle down and give it some revs, but it just went deathly quiet. The engine stopped and he stalled. So electronics or clutch there, but he's away now.
Well, he's in a Schumacher sandwich at the moment. Ralph gets out of the way. Why is he dragging that Toyota around when he's got so many problems? But Michael Schumacher critically is behind Kimi Raikkonen, and we're pretty sure Michael's got a pit again, so it may not have cost him anything actually. But let's wait and see who might damage that situation. Well, let's keep an eye on Felipe Massa. He is one stopping, we know that. It'll be interesting to see where he is in all of this.
Yeah, it certainly will. That was very sharp work by the McLaren mechanics to get that engine started again for Kimi Raikkonen. I wonder why it stopped. Did he stall it or did something else happen? But they just have these niggly little problems, don't they, that seem to hold them back from time to time, the McLaren team. They're such a wonderful organisation. They build great racing cars. They've got such strength and depth in every department. Yet at the racetrack, we saw it last year quite a few times, that as a team, they do just make a few little mistakes, and it ultimately costs them, particularly when they're up against a foe like Alonso in the Renault. Seemingly makes everything happen for him and hardly ever makes a mistake.
Now, will these two be teammates next year? We think Raikkonen's going to Ferrari. Will Michael Schumacher stay at Ferrari. Well, that would be something to watch, wouldn't it? Let's hope that happens. If I was Michael, if we're right and Kimi's going there, if I was Michael, I'd stay on and see how far I get. I mean, his work rate will be massive, much higher than Kimi's. He knows the team very intimately and exactly who does what around there. And I just fancy Michael might look okay against Kimi Räikkönen. I'd love to see that happen.
So would I. 16 laps to go here in the Canadian Grand Prix. The world champion, Fernando Alonso, bidding to win his 4th race in a row from pole position. He's had to sweat for it in the early stages. Does he have to sweat anymore as Villeneuve, I beg your pardon, Heidfeld comes in the BMW Sauber for his 2nd stop of the afternoon from 7th place.
Сейчас на свежей резине и с не таким уж полным баком, на 15 кругов всего заправили Ника, будет намного выше, чем темп у Жака, которого сдерживает Филиппе Масса, то вполне возможно, что они поменяются позициями после, соответственно, пит-стопа Жака Вильнёва, который, правда, скорее всего, состоится также уже на следующем круге. Так или иначе, Хайтель был очень недоволен вот этим фактом, что матч сборной Германии прошел между свободными заездами и квалификацией вчера. И, в общем, это вызвало некоторое недовольство у Ника, хотя раньше он никогда в пристрастии к футболу не был. Замечен, в отличие от Шумахера, который играет в футбол постоянно, и Шумахер здесь даже пошутил, что вот он бы с удовольствием попросил поставить ему маленький телевизор на руль, чтобы следить за всеми перипетиями футбола. Но этого делать не пришлось. До дополнительного времени матч не дошел вчера. Германия уверенно победила. И вот немцы выехали на квалификацию с полным сознанием уже выхода в 1/4. Что касается борьбы сейчас, ну, мы видели, что действительно заглохший мотор отбросил Кими Räikкönена назад. Михаэль Шумахер непосредственно у него на хвосте. Да, Вильнёв тут же заезжает в боксы. Но Михаэля Шумахера он останавливался тогда же, когда и Хайтвельд, и Вильнёв, и Клиен с Кулхардом. То есть где-то в районе 30-31 круга. И скорее всего, на тактику одного единственного пит-стопа не пойдет. Так что пусть Шумахер сейчас и близок к Кими Räikkönenu, но, скорее всего, его еще ждет 2-я дозаправка. В ближайшие буквально уже круги должен выясниться этот вопрос. Пока у нас, да, Клейн уже побывал в боксах, так что только Култхард, Масса и Михаэль Шумахер. Что касается Массы, опять же, может быть, и не будет 2-го пит-стопа. Что касается Култхарда, скорее всего, на следующем круге после Филиппе Массы. А вот Михаэль Шумахер.
Yes, Räikkönen second. Yep, Räikkönen is second. He's just in front of Michael. They should finish 38-40 seconds behind you now. So it's Alonso, Räikkönen, Michael.
Ага, мы видели, что Алонсо, хотя и остается еще 14 кругов до финиша, он уже очень всерьез интересуется позициями в чемпионате, потому что он спрашивает, на 2-м ли месте Кими. Ему говорят, да, Кими на 2-м, и непосредственно позади него Михаэль Шумахер, и у тебя достаточно большой над ними отрыв. Почему важно сейчас для Алонсо, чтобы Räikkönen был на 2-м месте? Вот мы говорили, что Феррари болеет за Макларен, чтобы отбирать очки у Алонсо, но ведь и в данной ситуации Рено болеет, получается, также за Макларен, чтобы отбирать очки у Феррари. Ближайшим соперником как Рено в Кубке конструкторов является Феррари, так и Фернандо Алонсо в чемпионате, в личном зачете чемпионата является Михаэль Шумахер. Поэтому если Кими Räikkönen сможет вклиниться, то в обоих зачетах это будет на пользу. Да, Михаэль Шумахер возвращается.
Into the closing stages of the Canadian Grand Prix. 7 times winner of this race, Michael Schumacher, pits from 3rd place. He's been having a battle with Kimi Räikkönen, who's currently 2nd. Fernando Alonso had some real pressure from Räikkönen earlier in the race, but he's now comfortably ahead after some problems for Räikkönen in both of his pit stops, and a little off-track excursion as well. Lost him about 25 seconds in total. Schumacher will come back out on track and feed in. Where will he feed in? Just alongside some Toro Rosso's lap traffic. So Felipe Massa, his teammate, is certainly a factor in this race, as is Giancarlo Fisichella, currently running in 4th place. There you can see the top 8 at the moment. Both of the BMWs are there. And interestingly, Nick Heidfeld has jumped his teammate Jacques Villeneuve in that final round of pit stops. So Villeneuve will be pretty peeved about that. A reminder for you that you can see Portugal versus Holland straight after this in the World Cup. And the winner of that game, of course, will play England in the quarter-finals of that competition. We're riding on board with the BMW of Nick Heidfeld, and well, Alonso at the front on the Michelin tyres, and if he can stay there, or indeed even if Raikkonen wins this race, then that will be Michelin's 100th Formula One victory, and that will be quite an emotional moment for them, particularly as they are withdrawing from Formula One at the end of this season. And it was announced this weekend that they have not put in a tender to be the single tyre supplier in Formula One when the whole sport reinvents itself in 2008. So unfortunately, we've only got nine more races with Michelin's company in Formula One. A great company, have done a lot for the sport. And if they can hold on here, they'll get their 100th Grand Prix victory.
No real changes at the front then. Alonso from Raikkonen, Michael Schumacher now 18 seconds adrift to Raikkonen in third place.
Beware the brake overheating, keep pushing.
Did he say there was one brake overheating, keep pushing or something? But they're obviously monitoring that on the telemetry back in the pits. Jacques being told to, if he's got brake problems, then ignore them. He's on for a World Championship point. He's clearly lost out somewhere against his teammate in the pit stops, and that truly remains sixth. Massa's one stop is actually not going to get him any further, it looks, than P5 at the moment, although he is catching Fisichella in fourth. We thought Coulthard was one stopping, and he was looking extremely strong to be in for a World Championship point, but he's done a late splash and dash. He's up to P11, just behind his teammate though, having started at the back of the grid. And the pair of the Red Bulls are chasing Jenson Button now very hard. Oh!
Oh my goodness me! A big accident for Jacques Villeneuve. Yeah. Well, we saw him hit the wall of champions in the build-up to the programme. He's hit the wall pretty hard there. It's not the same one, but he just went straight off the road. Everybody's been struggling with grip here this afternoon, and a safety car surely will have to be deployed here.
Well, that was the marbles, and I think he just got on the marbles from trying to pass Ralf Schumacher, who's coasting around in the Toyota, and I believe that Jacques just got on the marbles, and there's no way that can really be a technical problem on the exit of a corner like that.
Well, as I mentioned earlier on, there are walls around this racetrack that are ready to bite anybody who makes a mistake or goes offline. It's not like the modern circuits, and those, you can see the marbles as we're talking about them, little bits of rubber and dust that mix together. They're incredibly slippery, and they've caught just about every driver out here this afternoon in one way or another. Unfortunately for Villeneuve, he caught them at a place where there's a wall to hit, and hit it very hard he did.
Yeah, it was Ralph parked on the apex going slowly. Here we go, there's Ralph kind of trying to get out of the way, and Jacques looks just picked up the marbles and realises it, gets on the brakes, but nothing he can do. Straight to the scene of the accident, and he would have zero control. You're floating on the top of those little ball bearings effectively. But Alonso now will suddenly come immediately under pressure from Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher. They'll all be backed up. The top five, truly in sixth, is a lap down. So the top five will now all be line astern.
And don't be fooled, it was not a low-speed accident. Now you can see just the damage to the car, how much there was. 90 miles an hour Villeneuve was travelling at when he hit the wall there. So a big shock for Jacques Villeneuve. An even bigger shock, I think, for Fernando Alonso, who was comfortably looking at winning this race by something like half a minute. And now, instead, he's going to have 10 laps, or probably slightly less by the time the safety car pulls in, of Raikkonen and Schumacher breathing down his neck. Has he got the pace? Well, certainly. Judging by the way he's driven so far this weekend, you'd have to say what. But don't forget, this track is very, very treacherous at the moment. Marbles everywhere ready to catch out the unwary, as we've just seen. And would you want to be having to drive absolutely flat out to resist Raikkonen and Michael Schumacher with traps everywhere around you?
The only saving grace for Alonso is I think he's got the lap sixth place man, Jarno Trulli, behind him. There's not for the first time this afternoon, I'm asking why Ralf Schumacher is still out on the racetrack, and I suspect Jacques Villeneuve will be asking the same question.
Yeah, he's been off, he's been in the pits, he's had a drive-through penalty, he's had it all really, Ralf Schumacher, everything except enough speed to be a contender. And well, it's one thing to be out there, it's another thing to catch out a driver like Villeneuve and take away points.
He has to let you through.
Good, have to go on the dirty bit.
That is really, really unfortunate. Did you see just before he hit the wall? Look at the bits on the tyres. That's why he had no grip.
Yeah, I'd have been inclined to take my hands off the steering wheel with that one. That was a nasty accident and the track is not really designed there for a car to go headfirst into the wall. It's an unusual incident, that not something definitely you wouldn't be calculating that one if you were working out where to put extra tyres and softer parts to hit.
Well, funnily enough, this was the race, the Canadian Grand Prix many years ago, where we first saw a safety car in Formula One, and in fact finished, I believe one of the races here actually finished under a safety car a few years ago after an accident in the closing laps. I don't think this one's going to finish under the safety car. I think hopefully we'll get a little bit of racing, and when we do, the good news for Alonso is that he has Jarno Trulli there, you can see, and Nick Heidfeld between himself and the danger man, Kimi Räikkönen. Yeah, it was 1999 when the race finished under a safety car following an accident to Heinz-Harald Frentzen. But as I say, with 9 laps to go and only a modest amount of debris to clear up. So hopefully we'll get a good conclusion to this race in a few moments.
С вами вновь РЕН-ТВ, российский голос Формулы-1 в прямом эфире с трассы имени Жиля Вильнёва в Монреале, где менее 8 кругов остается до финиша Гран-при Канады 9-го этапа чемпионата мира 2006 года. Пейскар уходит с трассы, и сейчас будет рестарт. Рестарт между двумя группами болидов. Первый из них, те, кто в одном круге с лидером, это Алонсо, Райконен, Михаэль Шумахер, Джанкарло Фисикелло и Филиппе Масса. И другая, те, кто уже в одном круге позади, и между ними также идет борьба в очковой зоне. Возглавляет ее сейчас, вы видите, Ярно Трулли, и следом за ним, соответственно, Ник Хайтфельд, Дженсен Баттон, Кристиан Клин, Дэвид Култферд, Скотт Спид и Марк Вебер. И вот в этих обеих группах сейчас будут своеобразные сражения. Плюс к этому первая группа должна будет пропускать на круг, соответственно, вторую. Там небольшая ошибка.
We're back racing in Montreal. 7 laps to go to the conclusion of this Grand Prix. Finally, it seems Ralf Schumacher is going to retire from this race. I think Jacques Villeneuve will wish he'd retired a long time ago. He's been touring around slowly, and in trying to lap him, Villeneuve got on the marbles and hit the wall at turn 7, and that brought out the final safety car, which has just gone back in again. Alonso is leading this race from Kimi Räikkönen in second place. Third is Michael Schumacher. Fourth is Fisichella. Fifth is Massa. Sixth, Trulli. 7th, Heidfeld. And 8th, and on for a World Championship point after a very unpromising start to the afternoon, is Jenson Button. Although Christian Klien has been told by his team to attack Button because they believe he's vulnerable at the moment.
I just wonder if Ralph's preparing to drive the other way around the circuit now for the last few laps, but it's been a strange afternoon for him. Clearly the car has been a handful, to be fair to Ralph, but really don't understand why they've been persevering with that. But Alonso leads Räikkönen by 3.8 seconds. Michael Schumacher trying to find his way through the back markers. Blue flags will be waving. He's past Button then. Button's P8. And who's he got in front of him? That'll be Heidfeld in front of him. So that's the traffic has really stopped the chain of them getting hooked up behind the safety car.
Well, Ralph is definitely out of the car now, and Ted Kravitz is in the pits.
Yeah, and McLaren are absolutely apoplectic at Jarno Trulli. Trulli was just completely asleep on the restart. Alonso managed to hold them up as they were exiting the casino chicane, and then Alonso just legged it. Trulli was doing absolutely nothing, and because Räikkönen couldn't pass him because they were still under a safety car procedure, that's completely ruined any chance Räikkönen had of overtaking Alonso anytime soon.
And how much did that cost Kimi Räikkönen? 5.5 seconds. And as Ted says, any chance of getting on terms with Alonso. So on this is bogey circuit, he's now just 6 laps away from getting the win. He's never stood on the podium of the Canadian or American Grand Prix, Fernando Alonso. And he came here this weekend saying, this is a wrong I have got to put right. And well, he's had a lot of pressure to soak up here this afternoon in the early stages from Kimi Räikkönen. He led from pole position early on. Fisichella was given a penalty, a drive-through penalty for jumping the start. We then had a safety car very early on after a collision involving Nico Rosberg and Juan Pablo Montoya as they battled over 5th place, and they made contact in one of the very narrow parts of the circuit. Rosberg hit the wall. Montoya retired not long after that, and after the safety car, Michael Schumacher was held up behind Jarno Trulli for a long time. The Toyota didn't have the pace that the Ferrari did, and that really put paid to any chance Schumacher had this afternoon of having a go at Fernando Alonso. But Raikkonen, well, he stayed with the Spaniard right the way until the first round of pit stops. But at both of his stops here this afternoon, Raikkonen had problems. First time round, he had a sticking rear wheel. Second time round, he stalled the engine, and the combination of which meant that he lost a lot of time to Fernando Alonso. And then finally, as I say, Villeneuve hit the wall whilst both BMWs in points-paying position. That's Coulthard and Klein having a little battle, and that's nerfed Klein out of 9th place. So a go-karting move there from David Coulthard.
Yeah, I don't know if there was actually contact, didn't see it, but it looked like Klein, they looked like they both got in a bit hot. Actually, I thought it was Coulthard that was going to disappear on the outside of the racetrack, but it was Klein in the end. And then Scott Speed follows him through too, so an expensive corner for young Christian Klein. Alonso leads by 4.3 seconds. Michael Schumacher third, a further 3 seconds away. That puts Coulthard up into 9th from the back of the grid. He just he needs one more person now to drop out, and he's going to score a rather surprise point for him this afternoon. Fisichella's 4th, Massa 5th, Trulli 6th, Heidfeld 7th for BMW. Button clinging on to the final World Championship point.
Well, that would be something, wouldn't it, for Jenson Button. His teammate, Rubens Barrichello, has retired from this race. The first time this season that Barrichello's not made it to the finish line. And look how much pressure Button is coming under now from David Coulthard. He's caught him very quickly.
He has, hasn't he? DC's going to be having a sniff down into that final chicane or something. I don't know if he's got enough straight line speed. But you're going to have to be a long way up the inside to be able to pass a driver in the hairpin here, because there's just one tiny line that's not covered in discarded tyre rubber. And Jenson then pulls further away. That's a good slipstream position, though, for Coulthard in the Red Bull. But I don't think he's got enough time to get the job done.
Well, he's got 3 laps to give it a try. They are lapping in the mid-119s, 2.5 seconds a lap slower than race leader Fernando Alonso. Michael Schumacher has a late burst of pace. He's lapping in the low 116s, but I think it's too little, too late really for him and Ferrari. They're going to have a rueful exit from this race, because they really came here. Alonso himself was saying that he thought Ferrari were favourites, and that this was a race Schumacher needed to beat Alonso in if he was going to mount any kind of challenge in the second half of the season.
Okay, mate, let's get Jenson. Let's have him.
That's just
simple as that.
Yeah. DC's tell me something I don't know, but that's it's the new way. It's the new way on the radios of Formula One. We didn't used to have good enough transmission to have that sort of conversation, so you always kept communication down to an absolute minimum, so you didn't misunderstand something that was going on. But at the moment, he's not looking close enough to take it away from Jenson Button, that final World Championship point. Michael Schumacher is putting in a last gasp effort to try to get back on Kimi Raikkonen's terms. He's just 2.7 seconds adrift, and Coulthard's got a better run out of the hairpin. He's got the inside line too. Jenson can't sweep across now, and there's no point. He might as well just throw it in there, DC. You've got nothing to lose, and that's exactly what he does. Jenson then will have to be very slow on the exit, so beautifully done for Coulthard to take a point, and that was all about Jenson getting a little bit wild and ragged on the exit of the hairpin.
An absolutely textbook move from David Coulthard, and well, it's only about a single World Championship point, but they're taking it as seriously as if it was for a race victory, and what a wonderful move by David Coulthard in the Red Bull. Of course, a podium in Monaco a couple of races ago. His only other points finish was a single point in the Australian Grand Prix earlier in the season. So this will be his 3rd points finish of the season, and one of his most hard-fought. Remember, Coulthard started this race from the back of the grid after taking an engine penalty for having to change an engine. So an amazing recovery by David Coulthard, just showing what quality he still has at 35 and why Red Bull is so keen to retain him for next year.
Get a load of this, though, James. Michael Schumacher, 1:15.9. He's now just 1.8 seconds behind Kimi Raikkonen, but not enough laps to get the job done, is there?
Hang on, he's in front of him.
Where's Raikkonen?
Raikkonen's behind him. Michael Schumacher goes through in 2nd place, and Raikkonen is in 3rd place. He had a 1:20 lap. Schumacher had a 1:16 lap, so somewhere out the back. Let's see if we can see. Oh, no, it's at the hairpin again.
Yeah, Raikkonen's got on the marbles, and Michael says, I'll have a bit of that, thank you, I'm off. So Raikkonen then back into 3rd place.
Well, previously here, the great hazard was the wall of champions. Now it seems it's the hairpin of champions that's catching people out, getting on the marbles, getting on the loose stuff, losing grip, and critically for Raikkonen, losing a place. That's important for Schumacher. It means that Alonso's only going to add 2 points to his 23-point margin over him. So in Indianapolis, if he can do something, and it might still give him a chance in the second half of the season. We've got a car stopped. This must be Takuma Sato, I believe, stopped in the wall. So the run down the straight for the final time, and this is to get the monkey off his and Renault's back. They've come here 2 years in a row. They've been competitive. 2 years in a row they have retired, and for the first time Fernando Alonso is not only going to step onto the podium here in Montreal, he's going to step onto the top of the podium. He has his 4th straight win from pole position. Fernando Alonso wins. 2nd, Michael Schumacher. 3rd, Kimi Raikkonen. 4th is going to be Giancarlo Fisichella. And David Coulthard is going to get that final point. There he goes across the line. Button goes across a enormously disappointed 9th, I'm sure, with Scott Speed breathing down his neck in the Toro Rosso. Just 0.4 of a second behind at the end. Now, what an eventful Canadian Grand Prix. 2 safety car periods. And this man once again had to soak up a fair bit of pressure, but really, he always had an answer, didn't he, Martin?
He did, he had it under control, although Michael Schumacher was pacey at certain points of the race, and you have to say, had he not have been held up by Jarno Trulli early on, Michael Schumacher would have been a major factor in this Grand Prix. And you've still got to question that sort of odd qualifying 2-stop but a very long first stint that ended up putting behind them.
Lovely one, mate. Abbiamo vinto anche qua, bravissimo. Molto bravo.
He had all the bases.
He went a little bit wide, Michael got past him.
What happened to Raikkonen, he says. Exactly.
Well, indeed. What indeed? Well, a lot happened to Raikkonen. Problems in the pit stops and then problems on the racetrack as well. This is Tonio Liuzzi, just looking at in a slow-mo. And that's Sato hitting the wall in the background, so that's why he was parked up there.
We used to hit the wall a lot out there, but I sort of stopped doing that. But it's unusual to see a Formula 1 car in there this last sort of few years, but it used to be a place where we often ran wide into the wall.
Well, if you're as passionate about Formula 1 as Martin and I and the rest of the F1 ITV team, then make your voice heard. There's another FIA AMD spectator survey taking place. We need to hear your views on Formula 1, what you think of the cars, the rules, the racing at the moment, and the general show. Log on to www.fia.com and make your voice heard. Here in Canada, the Canadian Grand Prix has been won by Fernando Alonso ahead of Michael Schumacher and Kimi Raikkonen. My driver of the day is David Coulthard from the back of the grid after an engine change, finishing in 8th place. But it's not about me, it's about you. Who's your driver of the day?
It's about both of us. Yeah, Coulthard did a spectacular job, and I love those overtakes. But I don't know. I think for me today, the man who did a great job was Michael Schumacher in the Ferrari, and I think the pace he had and the way he handled certain situations, I'll probably give it equally, actually. Michael Schumacher, David Coulthard, the 2 oldest guys on the grid. Now, maybe that's interesting. On a tricky track like this, experience paid off, didn't it? But certainly I thoroughly enjoyed those overtakes from DC.
We all did. This is the corner that caught them all out. This is where the marbles were. And there is Raikkonen losing that 2nd place to Michael Schumacher, critically right at the very end of this Grand Prix. Well, it's been a thrilling afternoon and another dominant win for Fernando Alonso here in Montreal.
Alonso, first podium in Canada, first Canadian Grand Prix victory. Alonso from Schumacher and Raikkonen. Our coverage at the moment is also live on ITV4. And all the reaction to the race, that will take place live on ITV4 next, because ITV1, that's heading back to the World Cup. The Portugal-Holland match, the winners play England in the quarter-finals. You will get all the news in our ITV1 highlights a little bit later, our Grand Prix highlights, but it's football next on ITV1, where we'll be getting all the live reaction, all the podium celebrations from this Canadian Grand Prix in a couple of minutes' time on ITV4.
Вот Филиппе Амасса, который благодаря своему пятому месту сегодня получает 4 очка. Соответственно, Монтою опережает. И у Массы теперь 28 очков. Баттон свою возможность улучшить очковый счет упустил. Дженсен Баттон. Из-за, в общем, собственной ошибки, не ошибки. Вот какую-то птицу. Здесь чаек достаточно много. В Канаде летает, потому что и океан недалеко, да и река очень широкая. Вот Михаэль учтиво интересуется у Кими, что же у него такого случилось, что он его опередил. Так или иначе, но это произошло. И в чемпионате, соответственно, 2 очка, а не 4 теряет относительно Алонсо. Но главное мы видим вот в этом празднике то, что до этого лишь один лучший круг в 2003 и постоянные сходы. Вообще за 4 гонки здесь до этого Фернандо Алонсо смог набрать только 5 очков в этой гонке. Вот Мишлен был готов также к этой 100-й победе. И сам господин Бибенду мы видим здесь. И все механики Мишлена вот в этих специально выпущенных по случаю майках в честь 100-й победы. Так вот, если дальше возвращаться к ситуации в чемпионате, то свои очередные 2 очка получает Ник Хайтфельд. И, соответственно, друзья мои, у Хайтфельда 12 очков. Он вплотную подбирается к Баррикелло. Всего на 1 очко от него теперь отстает. Дэвид Кулхарт в 3-й раз в этом году в очковой зоне. И теперь сравнялся с Ральфом Шумахером, чья Тойота сошла с дистанции. А вот у Ярна Трулли сегодня действительно радостное событие. Его, пусть и скромное 6-е место, пусть и всего 3 очка, но это первые 3 очка для Ярна Трулли вообще в зачете чемпионата мира. И разом он опережает Кристиана Клина и выходит, соответственно, на 15 место позади Ника Росберга, ставшего сегодня, вы помните, жертвой в некотором роде горячности со стороны Хуана Пабло Монтойи. Тем временем призеры появляются уже вот здесь рядом с подиумом. Фернандо Алонсо, естественно, счастлив. Кими Райконен даже находит в себе силы на небольшую улыбку, несмотря на то, что если бы не первый пит-стоп, может быть, и вышел бы вперед относительно Алонсо. Во втором подпустил чуть ближе Михаэля, но Михаэль в любом случае был бы очень далеко, если бы не Жак Вильнёв, с коим он продолжал спорить заочно и по ходу всего этого уикенда. А так вот Пейскар и возможность быть недалеко от Кими, и возможность воспользоваться вот этой, может быть, ошибкой, может быть, проблемой механической того или иного рода. Ну а теперь очередной уже испанский гимн в 14-й раз в истории благодаря Фернандо Алонсо. А теперь Марсельеза в честь Рино. Что ж, Рено, который действительно просто молодцом, иначе и не скажешь. Уже 7-я победа из 9 гонок этого сезона. Только 2 досталось Феррари. Больше никто не выигрывал. Видели, механики все вместе, механики и мотористы, да, они любят друг друга подкалывать. Вот в Сильверстоуне, когда начался как раз чемпионат мира, тогда Англия играла с Парагваем, все мотористы, все французы наклеили себе наклейки официального фан-клуба Парагвая в боксах. Соответственно, здесь, когда Франция играла с Того, вы можете себе представить, за кого болели видели, за какую африканскую сборную английские механики Рено. Тем не менее, Ивери Шатийон и Энстоун работают прекрасно вместе, выигрывает гонку за гонкой. И все вот эти истории столетней войны остались далеко в прошлом, только на уровне шуток. Что касается Михаэля Шумахера, ну что ж, сегодня он сделал, конечно, все, что мог, учитывая относительный провал в пятницу, когда вообще, может быть, темнила команда, как намекала Фернандо Алонсо, а может быть и правда с огромным трудом проводила свободные заезды. В квалификации чуть лучше, но все равно были расстроены этому 5-му и 10-му местам, соответственно, Михаэль Шумахер и Филиппе Масса. Но вот, что касается Массы, и вовсе один-единственный пит-стоп. И это единственный из всего пелотона, кто пошел на эту рискованную тактику. Она в итоге с 10-го места принесла ему 5-ю финишную позицию и очередные 4 очка. Что касается Михаэля Шумахера, ну что ж, подиум и плюс из-за заминки Кими Райконена и вовсе 2-я строчка пьедестала. Да, он чуть-чуть отпускает Алонсо, но тем не менее Алонсо не так и далеко в чемпионате, как мог бы быть. Специальная кепка тоже в честь 100-й победы Мишлена у Фернандо. Теперь пилоты пойдут отдыхать, пойдут затем на пресс-конференцию. Я призываю вас оставаться вместе с нами, потому что через неделю у нас Индианаполис, Гран-при США на канале РЕН-ТВ. Итак, поздравляем финиширующих на подиуме на этом Гран-при Канады. На 3-м месте Макларен Мерседес Кими Райконена, на 2-м Феррари Михаэля Шумахера. Ну и, наконец, первая победа здесь, в Канаде, для действующего чемпиона мира Фернандо Алонсо на Рено. Что ж, великолепный день для вас, Фернандо. Да, гонка была очень сложной. Очень много грязи было вне, собственно говоря, траектории. Очень много ошметков от резины, и нельзя было делать никакой ошибки, иначе, чуть-чуть загрязнев резину, можно было разом потерять несколько секунд. Достаточно много аварий, всяких инцидентов было по ходу гонки. Трудно было не потерять свою концентрацию, даже когда был большой отрыв, но я никогда этого не сделал. 2 раза Пейскар появлялся на трассе. Расскажите, как было управлять машиной, как она менялась по ходу этой гонки? Да нет, я считаю, что вообще весь уикенд был практически великолепным. Естественно, что до Пейскара разрыв у меня был гораздо больше, чем оказался тот, который был затем, когда Пейскар покинул трассу. Но если хочешь выиграть гонку, то нужно в любом случае уметь бороться в любой ситуации. Мишлен сегодня сделал прекрасную работу, предоставил великолепную резину. И поздравляем вас также, Михаэль. Блестящее 2-е место сегодня. Много времени было потеряно следом за Ярно Трулли в начале этой гонки, ну а затем 2-е место. Да, я думаю, спасибо Пейскару. Я уже думал, что я никогда не вернусь. Жаль, что так мало времени оставалось до конца гонки в этот момент. На самом деле, действительно, как и сказал Фернандо, очень легко сегодня было ошибиться, уйти чуть-чуть с траектории. Так что гонка была достаточно сложной. И в какой-то момент, да, у меня также были какие-то ошибки, какие-то моменты меня чуть-чуть выносило. И главное было не разбить машину. Что касается, когда Пейскар выехал на трассу, то мы, конечно, ожидали, что мы вдруг сможем выиграть позицию. А в последние пару кругов вы уже преследовали Фернандо. О чем вы думали? Ну, я надеялся, конечно, что что-нибудь получится. Что, может быть, он ошибется, чуть-чуть вылетит где-то с трассы. Но, с другой стороны, в таких условиях, конечно, гораздо проще самому, может быть, сделать ошибку, когда ты пытаешься атаковать, преследовать кого-то. Ну что ж, случилось то, что случилось, и мы вновь потеряли в чемпионате минимум очков, которые мы могли потерять. Весь уикенд был неплохим для команды. Теперь продолжаем. Блестящий пилотаж. Кими, вы преследовали Фернандо в начале гонки очень всерьез, а затем пит-стоп. Да. Наверное, была не самая легкая гонка для нас. От старта до первого пит-стопа все было хорошо, а затем проблемы с сцеплением. Резина буксовала и ничего не получалось. Так что на втором пидстопе из-за этого машина и вовсе практически заглохла, и сцепление вообще не сработало. А в итоге я потерял еще и второе место для Михаэля. Слишком широко вышел из поворота, машина заскользила на торможении на грязной части трассы, и затем не было абсолютно никакого сцепления. Чтобы разогнаться, я уже ничего не мог сделать. Ну что ж, конечно, может быть, не тот результат, на который мы надеялись, но с другой стороны, мы стартовали третьими и финишировали третьими. На втором отрезке вы залили чуть-чуть больше топлива. Как с точки зрения расхода резины, как резина себя чувствовала? Да, ну, я думаю, что мы залили не больше, чем планировали, в принципе. В общем, мы прекрасно знали по свободным заездам, как себя ведет машина с этим количеством топлива на борту. И, в общем, все было нормально. И вы думаете, что у вас резины были какие-то другие проблемы, чтобы разогнаться после пейскара, чтобы быстро подниматься в температуре? Да нет, я думаю, что ничего такого не было относительно Михаэля, просто я сам совершил ошибку. Ну что ж, Фернандо, возвращаемся к вам. Очередная победа. Феррари были сегодня чуть медленнее, чем, может быть, ожидали, в том числе и в вашей команде. Да, но я думаю, что я надеялся, что Физикелло также финиширует впереди Михаэля и Кими, чтобы помочь чуть-чуть оторваться мне в чемпионате. А так получилось, что не очень увеличился отрыв в чемпионате. Ну что ж, попробуем через неделю в Индианаполисе выиграть еще раз и еще увеличить отрыв в чемпионате.